The A Shau Valley, nestled in the northwest corner of South Vietnam near the Laotian border, earned its grim nickname, the Valley of Death, during the Vietnam War. This narrow, jungle-choked corridor, flanked by steep, misty hills, was a critical supply route for the North Vietnamese Army, NVA, via the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Its strategic importance made it a crucible of relentless combat, where American and South Vietnamese forces clashed with NVA regulars in brutal, often desperate battles. The valley's triple canopy jungle, shrouded in perpetual fog, created an oppressive atmosphere, amplifying the sense of dread for soldiers deployed there. From 1963 to 1971, the valley saw fierce engagements, including the infamous Battle of Hamburger Hill in 1969 and the evacuation of fire support base Ripcord in 1970. The relentless fighting left countless dead, many unburied, their remains swallowed by the jungle. Veterans often spoke of an eerie presence in the valley, a feeling that the land itself was haunted by the souls of the fallen. Reports of ghostly apparitions, shadowy figures moving through the trees, or spectral comrades standing watch began to circulate among troops as early as 1965. These stories, dismissed by some as the product of stress and fatigue, were persistent enough to become part of the valley's dark legend. The A Shau's isolation, combined with its bloody history, set the stage for tales of the supernatural that would haunt soldiers long after they left its cursed ground. The pervasive dread that clung to the A Shau Valley was more than a psychological byproduct of war. It was as if the land itself absorbed the anguish of its countless casualties, exhaling it as an unnatural chill. Soldiers spoke of moments when the jungle seemed to pulse with a life of its own, where whispers carried on the wind, unintelligible yet laden with sorrow. One account from a 1966 patrol described a sudden silence overtaking the usual cacophony of insects and birds, replaced by a low, mournful hum that seemed to rise from the earth. The men, hardened by months of combat, felt an inexplicable urge to flee, as if the valley was warning them to leave. Some veterans swore they saw their own shadows move independently, stretching and twisting along the jungle floor, defying the dim light filtering through the canopy. These experiences, shared in hushed tones around campfires, were often met with skepticism, yet the sheer volume of similar tales lent them weight. Vietnamese locals, steeped in spiritual traditions, believed the valley was a nexus for Am Han, spirits trapped by violent deaths, unable to find peace. They avoided the area, warning that disturbing the dead risked invoking their wrath. For American troops, these cultural beliefs merged with their own fears, creating a shared mythology of a valley alive with the restless dead. The A Shau's terrain, scarred by bombs and littered with the remnants of war, rusted weapons, shattered gear, and unclaimed bones, became a canvas for these hauntings, where every rustle in the undergrowth carried the weight of the unseen, forever binding the living to the lost. American troops entering the A Shau Valley in the mid-1960s reported unsettling experiences that defied explanation. Soldiers described seeing ghostly figures gliding through the dense jungle, their movements unnaturally fluid, as if unbound by the physical world. One account, shared on a veterans forum, detailed a patrol from the 101st Airborne Division in 1968. The squad, moving silently at dusk, spotted a figure in American fatigue standing motionless ahead. Assuming it was a lost comrade, they called out, but the figure vanished into the mist. When they reached the spot, no tracks or signs of passage were found. Such sightings were often attributed to the valley's oppressive environment. Triple canopy jungles blocked sunlight, creating perpetual twilight, while the constant threat of ambush heightened paranoia. Yet the consistency of these reports across units suggested something more. Veterans spoke of feeling watched, not by the enemy, but by an unseen presence. Some believed these were the spirits of fallen soldiers, unable to rest due to the valley's violent history. The NVA's use of tunnels and hidden bunkers added to the unease, as troops wondered if the apparitions were tied to the countless unburied dead. These stories, though rarely recorded officially, spread through word of mouth, cementing the Aishal's reputation as a place where the line between the living and the dead blurred. The Aishal Valley's eerie aura seemed to seep into the soldiers' very bones, a pervasive unease that lingered long after patrols ended. Veterans recounted moments when the jungle itself appeared to conspire against them, its dense foliage concealing not just the enemy but something far more elusive. One chilling tale from a 1967 patrol described a soldier catching a glimpse of his own reflection in a murky stream, only to see the face of a fallen friend staring back, eyes hollow and pleading. The soldier stumbled away, shaken, unable to explain the vision. Others spoke of hearing faint whispers names of the dead, called softly in familiar voices carried on the damp breeze. These experiences, often dismissed as fatigue-induced hallucinations, were too frequent to ignore. Platoon leaders noted men refusing to venture into certain clearings, claiming they felt an oppressive weight, as if the air itself resisted their presence. Vietnamese folklore, shared by local interpreters, spoke of Ma Rung, jungle spirits that guarded sacred grounds and punished intruders. Soldiers began to wonder if the valley's unburied dead had merged with these ancient entities, creating a spectral force that watched their every move. The constant threat of NVA ambushes only deepened the paranoia, blurring the line between human foes and otherworldly watchers. Equipment malfunctions, radios crackling with static, or compasses spinning wildly were attributed to the valley's malevolent energy. These stories, passed from one unit to another, wove a tapestry of dread, transforming the Aishal into a haunted realm where the living tread lightly. Ever mindful of the shadows that moved just beyond sight, whispering of battles lost and souls unclaimed. Among the most chilling accounts from the Aishal Valley came from the Army's tunnel rats, soldiers tasked with navigating the claustrophobic NVA tunnel networks. One story, posted by a terminally ill veteran on Reddit's No Sleep in the late 2010s, recounted a harrowing mission in 1969. The veteran, part of a two-man team, descended into a tunnel near Hill 937. The air was thick, the darkness absolute, yet an oil lamp flickered in the main chamber, untouched by booby traps. As they crept forward, the veteran's partner froze, whispering that he saw a figure in the shadows, a soldier in tattered US gear, staring with hollow eyes. The figure gestured toward the exit before dissolving. Moments later, the tunnel began to collapse, forcing a frantic escape. The veterans swore the apparition saved their lives. Tunnel rats faced extreme psychological strain, crawling through tight, booby-trap spaces, which skeptics argued could explain such visions. However, similar stories emerged from other units, describing spectral guides or warnings. Vietnamese beliefs about wandering soul spirits of those who died violently without proper burial aligned eerily with these accounts and suggesting a cultural resonance to the phenomena. The tunnel rat's tale, though unverified, remains a haunting testament to the valley's supernatural lore, where even the bravest soldiers encountered the inexplicable. The Aishal Valley's tunnel networks, a labyrinth of earth and shadow, seem to harbor more than just NVA soldiers. Tunnel rats, already burdened by the dread of booby traps and suffocating darkness, often returned with stories that chilled their comrades. One veteran, in a 1970 letter to his brother, described a mission where his flashlight caught a glint of eyes human, yet lifeless, staring from a side passage. The figure, clad in a mix of US and NVA gear, pointed silently toward a hidden tripwire before fading into the wall. The rat disarmed the trap, heart pounding, unsure if he'd seen a ghost or a trick of his mind. Such encounters were whispered among the rats, who developed rituals tapping knives on tunnel walls or muttering prayers to ward off the unseen. The valley's oppressive atmosphere, where every sound echoed like a warning, amplified these experiences. Vietnamese tunnel workers, captured and interrogated, spoke of En May, spirits angered by the desecration of their resting places, haunting the underground. Some rats reported hearing faint sobs or the clink of dog tags in empty chambers, as if the dead were still trapped below. Skeptics pointed to carbon dioxide buildup or sleep deprivation, but the consistency of these tales defied easy dismissal. The tunnels, carved through soil soaked with blood, seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, as if the valley's fallen had claimed them as their domain. For the tunnel rats, each descent was a gamble, not just with life but with sanity, as they navigated a realm where the line between reality and the supernatural blurred, leaving them to wonder if the Aishao's ghosts were guiding them or luring them deeper into the Earth's haunted embrace. The U.S. military, aware of Vietnamese beliefs in wandering souls, exploited these superstitions in a psychological warfare campaign known as Operation Wandering Soul. Launched in the late 1960s, the operation involved broadcasting eerie recordings, ghostly wails, Buddhist funeral music, and voices of dead Viet Cong soldiers over loudspeakers from helicopters and ground units. Ghost Tape Number 10, crafted by the 6th Psychological Operations Battalion, featured chilling pleas like, "My friends, I am dead. Go home before it is too late." The tapes aimed to demoralize Viet Cong fighters, leveraging their fear of spirits trapped by improper burials. In the Aishao Valley, where dense jungles amplified the recording's eerie effect, the tapes sometimes backfired, unnerving American troops as well. Veterans recalled sleepless nights as the haunting sounds echoed through the valley, blurring the line between propaganda and reality. Some Viet Cong reportedly fired at the speakers, revealing their positions, but others seemed unaffected, suggesting the operation's mixed success. The campaign's unintended consequence was reinforcing the valley's haunted reputation, as soldiers began to wonder if the spirits they heard were more than just recordings. Operation Wandering Soul remains a bizarre chapter in the war, highlighting how deeply the supernatural permeated Aishao's psyche. The haunting echoes of Operation Wandering Soul lingered in the valley's mist, weaving themselves into the soldiers' fears and the landscape's dark mythology. The tapes, designed to exploit Vietnamese superstitions, seemed to awaken something deeper in the Aishao, as if the recording stirred the restless spirits already dwelling there. Veterans reported moments when the broadcasted wails were answered by otherworldly cries from the jungle, unconnected to any loudspeaker. One soldier, stationed at a forward operating base in 1969, recounted a night when the tapes played, only for the sound to morph into a chorus of anguished voices, too vivid to be mere propaganda. The men clutched their rifles, scanning the darkness, convinced the valley itself was responding. Vietnamese villagers, questioned years later, spoke of An Chien Tran war ghosts roused by the tapes, angered by the mockery of their suffering. Some American troops began to see fleeting figures during these broadcasts, shadowy forms in tattered uniforms moving just beyond the perimeter, their faces obscured by fog. The psychological strain of constant danger, coupled with the valley's oppressive gloom, made it hard to dismiss these sightings as tricks of the mind. Radios sometimes crackled with static that formed whispered words, unintelligible yet chilling, as if the dead were hijacking the frequencies. Operation Wandering Soul, meant to break the enemy, instead deepened the Aishao spectral aura, leaving soldiers to question whether they were fighting only the living. The campaign's eerie legacy endured, with veterans recalling how the valley seemed to amplify the tape's horror, turning a tactical ploy into a conduit for the supernatural, where the line between psychological warfare and genuine hauntings vanished in the jungle's embrace. The 1969 Battle of Hamburger Hill, fought on Dong A Pia in the Aishao Valley, was among the war's bloodiest engagements. Over 10 days, the 101st Airborne Division's 3rd Brigade battled NVA forces for control of Hill 937, suffering 72 killed and 372 wounded. The intense fighting, coupled with friendly fire incidents and relentless enemy resistance, left a deep psychological scar on survivors. Amid the chaos, Some soldiers reported seeing apparitions of fallen comrades. One veteran, interviewed for a 1990s documentary, described spotting a squad mate, killed days earlier, standing at the edge of a foxhole and gesturing toward an NVA bunker. The veteran followed the gesture, uncovering a hidden enemy position that saved his unit. Such stories were whispered among troops, rarely reported to superiors for fear of being labeled unstable. The battle's aftermath, with bodies strewn across the hill and many unrecovered, fueled beliefs that the valley was a resting place for restless spirits. Vietnamese villagers later claimed the hill was cursed, avoided even decades after the war. Hamburger Hill's brutal legacy, combined with these eerie sightings, solidified the A Shao's reputation as a place where the dead lingered, watching over or warning the living. The spectral presence on Hamburger Hill seemed to weave itself into the fabric of the A Shao Valley's haunted legacy, as if the blood-soaked slopes of Dong Apia held the souls of the fallen in an eternal vigil. Veterans recounted nights when the air grew heavy, charged with an unnatural stillness, broken only by faint whispers or the distant clatter of gear, as if ghostly soldiers were still manning their posts. One paratrooper, in a 2000s memoir, described a chilling encounter during a rain-soaked night. A figure in tattered fatigues, resembling a lost comrade, appeared near a shattered tree, pointing toward a concealed NVA sniper nest. The soldier's warning saved lives, but no trace of the figure remained. Such visions, though dismissed by some as trauma-induced hallucinations, were too frequent to ignore. The hill's scarred terrain, littered with shrapnel and unrecovered remains, seemed to pulse with a restless energy, as if refusing to let the dead rest. Vietnamese locals, interviewed decades later, spoke of Linh Han Chien Tran war spirits bound to the hill, their anger palpable in the unnatural fog that clung to its slopes. Soldiers reported compasses failing and radios emitting low moans, untraceable to any source. The psychological toll of Hamburger Hill, amplified by its brutal losses, blurred the line between reality and the supernatural, leaving survivors to wonder if the apparitions were protectors or omens. For those who fought there, the A Shao's ghosts were not mere stories but a tangible presence, their silent gestures a haunting reminder of the comrades left behind, forever tethered to the valley's cursed earth, watching over the living with eyes that never closed. In March 1966, the A Shao Valley was the site of a desperate defense by U.S. Special Forces and South Vietnamese irregulars against a massive NVA assault. Air Commando units, flying outdated A-1E Sky Raiders and C-47 gunships, provided critical support under harrowing conditions. Major Bernard Fisher, awarded the Medal of Honor for rescuing a downed pilot, later spoke of an eerie calm during his daring landing on the enemy-controlled runway. Some aircrew reported seeing ghostly figures on the ground soldiers in American uniforms, seemingly directing airstrikes or waving them off. One C-47 gunship crew, shot down under the valley's low clouds, was rumored to have been guided to safety by a spectral figure before their crash. These accounts, though anecdotal, were shared among air commandos, who faced extreme danger in the valley's anti-aircraft shooting gallery. The psychological toll of flying low through fog and enemy fire likely contributed to these visions, but their persistence across missions suggested a shared experience. Vietnamese beliefs in ghosts of soldiers who died far from home resonated with these reports, as many fallen commandos were never recovered. The Air Commando stories added a chilling dimension to the A Shao supernatural narrative, where even the skies seemed haunted. The A Shao Valley skies, thick with fog and menace, carried an otherworldly weight that unnerved even the most seasoned air commandos. Pilots spoke of fleeting shadows darting across their cockpit canopies, too swift to be enemy fire or birds, vanishing into the valley's murky haze. One A-1E Sky Raider pilot, in a 1970s debriefing, described a mission where his radio crackled with a voice calm, American, and unfamiliar, directing him to alter course seconds before anti-aircraft guns opened fire. No Allied units were broadcasting on that frequency. The valley's low clouds, often concealing NVA gunners, seemed to pulse with spectral forms, as if the fallen were guiding or warning those still in flight. Crews reported instruments malfunctioning inexplicably, altimeters spinning, compasses locking on impossible bearings, as if the A Shao's restless spirits interfered with the very physics of flight. Vietnamese folklore, shared by local allies, spoke of On-Phi-Com, pilot ghosts who lingered where they fell, forever bound to the skies they once roamed. Some commandos, hardened by relentless missions, began carrying talismans or whispering prayers before takeoff, a nod to the valley's eerie reputation. One C-47 crew, forced to ditch in the jungle, swore a faint figure in a flight jacket led them to a clearing before fading into the mist, ensuring their rescue. The psychological strain of dodging flak in a fog-choked shooting gallery could explain these visions, yet their recurrence across squadrons hinted at a deeper truth. The Aishal's haunted skies, where the dead seemed to linger as silent navigators, left air commandos grappling with a chilling question. Were they flying through a battlefield or a graveyard where the spirits of their comrades still soared? Vietnamese culture deeply reveres the dead, with beliefs in wandering souls, spirits of those who died violently or without proper burial shaping local perceptions of the A Shao Valley. Villagers near the valley, interviewed in post-war studies, described hearing screams and seeing apparitions of soldiers, both Vietnamese and American, wandering the jungles. One 1993 account from a farmer in the coastal central region, near former A Shao battlegrounds, detailed an encounter with his late wife and children, killed in a 1968 massacre. The spirits, seated on a stone, urged him to rebury their remains, a task he undertook with community support. Such stories reflect the Vietnamese practice of ancestor worship, where proper rituals ensure souls become protective ancestors rather than malevolent ghosts. The war's mass casualties, with many bodies left unburied, fueled beliefs in hungry ghosts haunting the valley. Communist authorities discouraged these stories, viewing them as superstitious, yet families continued seeking missing soldiers' remains for reburial. The Vietnamese perspective, rooted in cultural and spiritual traditions, offers a parallel to American soldiers' experiences, suggesting the Ashao's hauntings transcended nationality, binding all who perished there in a shared, restless afterlife. The A Shao Valley's spectral legacy seemed to weave the living and the dead into a shared tapestry of sorrow, where Vietnamese villagers felt the weight of unquiet spirits as keenly as foreign soldiers. Elders spoke of nights when the jungle hummed with eerie chants, as if the fallen were reciting prayers for peace they could not find. One woman, interviewed in a 2001 ethnographic study, described a vision of her brother, a Viet Cong fighter killed in 1969, standing at her doorstep, his uniform soaked in blood, silently pleading for a proper funeral. Guided by this apparition, she located his remains near an old A Shao bunker, performing rituals to ease his soul. Such encounters were common, with villagers reporting ghostly procession soldiers marching in eerie silence along paths once used by the Ho Chi Minh Trail. These spirits, or Han Lang Thang, were believed to linger due to the valley's violent history, their unrest fueled by the absence of ancestral altars. Despite communist suppression of such beliefs, families held clandestine ceremonies, burning incense and offering rice to appease the dead. The A Shao's scarred landscape, dotted with bomb craters and forgotten graves, amplified these hauntings, as if the earth itself mourned. Villagers avoided certain groves, claiming they felt icy gusts or heard footsteps in the stillness. These stories, echoing American tales of spectral comrades, suggested a universal grief, where cultural boundaries dissolved in the face of the valley's supernatural aura. For the Vietnamese, the A Shao was not just a battlefield but a sacred ground, where the living honored the dead through whispered prayers and quiet offerings, and seeking to calm the restless souls bound to its haunted embrace. The 1970 evacuation of Fire Support Base Ripcord marked the last major U.S. battle in the Aishal Valley and one of its most haunting episodes. The 101st Airborne Division faced relentless NVA assaults, with 75 Americans killed and over 400 wounded. As the base crumbled under mortar fire, soldiers reported eerie phenomena. One sergeant, quoted in a 2010 veteran's memoir, described seeing a fallen comrade killed earlier in the siege, standing at the perimeter, pointing toward an incoming NVA sapper team. The warning allowed his unit to repel the attack. Other troops spoke of hearing disembodied voices calling their names in the night, only to find no one there. The evacuation, conducted under heavy fire, left behind equipment and unrecovered bodies, deepening the sense of loss. Veterans later speculated that the valley's intense combat history had imbued it with a spiritual residue, where the dead remained tethered to their final moments. Vietnamese locals avoided the site, claiming it was cursed by restless spirits. Ripcord's fall, a humiliating defeat, amplified the Aishal's mystique as a place where the supernatural and military collided. With soldiers haunted by both the enemy and their own lost comrades, the Aishal Valley's spectral grip on Fire Support Base Ripcord seemed to tighten as the battle raged, its haunted aura seeping into every foxhole and bunker. Soldiers whispered of shadows moving against the flickering light of mortar blasts, figures that bore the faces of those killed in earlier assaults, standing watch in eerie silence. One private, in a 2015 oral history, recounted waking to the sound of boots crunching on gravel, only to see a fallen friend, his uniform torn and bloodied, gesturing toward a weak point in the perimeter moments before an NVA probe. The vision vanished, but the warning saved lives. Such encounters, though unspoken to officers, spread among the ranks, fueling a belief that the valley's dead were bound to its scarred earth. The constant shelling and dense fog amplified the unease, as radios hissed with unintelligible murmurs, sometimes forming names of the deceased. Vietnamese villagers, familiar with the concept of An Chien Tran war spirits, later told researchers the base's ruins were shunned, marked by cold winds and faint cries at dusk. The evacuation's chaos, with helicopters lifting off amid gunfire, left behind not just gear but a sense of unresolved loss, as if the fallen refused to depart. Survivors spoke of dreams where their comrades appeared, urging them to remember the valley's cost. The Aishal's relentless violence, combined with its unburied dead, seemed to forge a supernatural residue that clung to Ripcord's slopes. For those who escaped, the base's fall was not just a military defeat, but a descent into a realm where the living and dead coexisted, and their spectral comrades forever tethered to the valley's cursed ground, whispering warnings through the fog of war. In early 1968, during the Tet Offensive, a C-47 cargo aircraft crewed by the 834th Air Division flew over the Aishal Valley. A veteran loadmaster, Robert L. Pollock, later shared a bizarre experience on the Paranormalist blog. At 25,000 feet, a swirling black mist entered the pressurized cargo hold, moving against the aircraft's airflow. The mist, grayish-black and odorless, hovered briefly before retreating and vanishing through the hull. Pollock, initially unfazed, grew uneasy reflecting on the incident, ruling out mechanical causes like condensation due to the altitude and lack of active air conditioning. Commenters on the blog suggested paranormal explanations, from ghostly manifestations to jinn-like entities, though Pollock remained skeptical of supernatural interpretations. Similar reports of unexplained mists or shadowy forms emerged from other Aishal veterans, often tied to moments of high stress or proximity to battle sites. The valley's dense jungles and constant fog may have contributed to these perceptions, but the consistency of such accounts across contexts hints at a deeper phenomenon. Pollock's story, while singular, underscores the Aishal's ability to evoke fear and wonder, where even hardened veterans encountered the inexplicable in the skies above the Valley of Death. The Aishao's eerie skies seemed to harbor mysteries that defied the logic of war, as if the valley's restless spirits could pierce even the sanctity of flight. Other air crews reported similar phenomena, wisps of dark vapor trailing their aircraft, untouched by wind, or fleeting shadows glimpsed in the cockpit's periphery. One co-pilot, in a 1968 debriefing note, described a chilling moment when his C-47's instruments flickered, and a formless black haze seemed to coil around the altimeter, dispersing only after a sharp dive. These incidents, often unreported to avoid ridicule, were shared in hushed tones among the 834th Air Division. Vietnamese ground crews, steeped in local lore, whispered of Bong Ma, shadow spirits born from the valley's unburied dead, capable of crossing into the heavens. Some speculated the black mist was a manifestation of collective grief, the Aishao's fallen soldiers reaching out through the fog that cloaked their graves. The valley's turbulent weather, sudden squalls, and unnatural calms seemed to amplify these encounters, as if the elements conspired with the supernatural. Pollock's experience, though unique in its clarity, echoed tales from ground troops who saw dark mists rising from battle sites, lingering like sentinels. Skeptics pointed to high-altitude optical illusions or engine exhaust, but the emotional weight of these sightings lingered. For air crews, the Aishao was not just a combat zone, but a liminal space where the boundaries of reality frayed. The black mist, whether a trick of the mind or a spectral envoy, became a haunting emblem of the valley's power to unsettle, leaving those who soared above its cursed expanse to question whether they had brushed against the souls still tethered to its blood-soaked earth. A lesser-known but chilling rumor from the Aishao Valley involved experimental red night vision goggles used by U.S. Special Forces in the late 1960s. The posts on X in 2023 and 2024 described soldiers spotting demonic entities, shadowy, humanoid figures with glowing eyes while wearing these devices. One account, shared by Adom Approach, suggested the goggles' unique wavelength revealed entities akin to jinn, invisible to the naked eye. Soldiers reportedly saw these figures near battle sites, often during intense combat or near death. The entities were described as watching or moving among the troops, vanishing when the goggles were removed. Skeptics argued the visions were hallucinations induced by stress, or the goggles' disorienting red tint, which strained the eyes. However, the stories persisted, with some veterans claiming the entities appeared only in the Aishao, not other theaters. Vietnamese folklore about spirits haunting battlegrounds lent credence to these accounts, as did the valley's reputation for supernatural activity. The red goggles, discontinued after the war, became a footnote in military history. But their association with demonic sightings added a layer of terror to the Aishao's already fearsome legend, blurring the line between technology and the occult. The Aishao Valley's sinister aura seemed to amplify the unsettling visions seen through the red night vision goggles, as if the valley's very essence manipulated the technology to reveal its hidden denizens. Special Forces operators whispered of encounters where these entities, tall, shadowy figures with eyes like burning coals, moved with predatory grace, observing from the jungle's edge. One soldier, in a 2022 podcast interview, recounted a 1969 ambush where his goggles revealed a figure standing over a fallen comrade, its gaze fixed on the living before it dissolved into the darkness. The valley's oppressive atmosphere, thick with fog and the weight of countless deaths, seemed to fuel these sightings. Lomielda. Vietnamese scouts, familiar with tales of Quai Rong forest demons, warned that the goggles might pierce the veil between worlds, exposing spirits angered by the war's desecration. Some operators reported physical sensations, icy chills, or sudden nausea when the entities appeared, as if their presence drained the air itself. The goggles' red hue, designed to enhance night vision, cast the jungle in an otherworldly glow, amplifying the sense of unreality. Equipment malfunctions were common. Batteries drained inexplicably, or the goggles flickered, framing the figures in stuttering crimson light. While skeptics attributed these visions to fatigue or optical strain, the specificity of the Aishao as their setting defied easy explanation. Veterans swore the entities never appeared in other regions, tying them to the valley's blood-soaked history. The red goggles, now relics of a bygone war, left a haunting legacy, their brief use in the Aishao forging a chilling mythos where technology and the supernatural collided, revealing glimpses of a realm where the valley's restless dead watched the living with unblinking, fiery eyes. In 1967, a Marine reconnaissance team operating near the Aishao Valley reported a chilling encounter during a night patrol. According to a veteran's account in a 1980s war memoir, the team spotted a group of American soldiers moving silently through the jungle, their uniforms tattered and faces obscured. Assuming they were a lost unit, the Marines signaled, but the group vanished without a trace. The patrol found no footprints or broken foliage where the figures had been. Days later, the team learned no other U.S. units were in the area. Similar stories emerged from other patrols, describing phantom platoons that appeared and disappeared, often near sites of heavy casualties. Some veterans believed these were the spirits of soldiers killed in earlier battles, like the 1966 Ashao Outpost defense, where many special forces operatives perished. The psychological strain of jungle warfare, with its constant ambushes and isolation, likely amplified these experiences, but their recurrence across units was striking. Vietnamese villagers, familiar with the concept of wandering souls, viewed such sightings as warnings or pleas for proper burial. The Phantom Patrol stories, though unverified, became part of the Aishao's oral history, a testament to the valley's ability to haunt even the most disciplined soldiers with visions of their lost brothers in arms. The Aishao Valley's spectral patrols seemed to stalk the living with a purpose, as if the fallen sought to guide or warn those still fighting in its cursed embrace. Marines spoke of nights when the jungle's oppressive silence was broken by faint murmurs, snatches of radio chatter, or whispered commands emanating from empty clearings. One corporal, in a 1985 reunion recounting, described his team trailing a ghostly squad through dense fog, their silhouettes flickering in the moonlight, only to dissolve when approached. The ground, undisturbed by footprints, bore only the scars of past battles. These apparitions often appeared near sites of devastation, like the 1966 Ashao Special Forces camp, where unrecovered bodies lay entombed in the earth. Vietnamese guides, steeped in tales of uneasy, soldier spirits, claimed these phantoms were bound to the valley, unable to rest without proper rites. Some Marines reported equipment failures, radios emitting static laced with distant voices, or compasses spinning wildly as if the spirits interfered with the tools of war. The relentless ambushes and isolation of the Aishao amplified these encounters, yet their consistency across patrols suggested more than mere hallucination. Soldiers began leaving small offering cigarettes or dog tags at patrol sites, hoping to appease the restless dead. The valley's triple canopy jungle, cloaked in perpetual shadow, seemed to harbor these spectral platoons, their silent marches a haunting echo of battles lost. For the Marines, the Phantom, patrols were not just visions but a tangible link to comrades who perished, their ghostly forms a chilling reminder that in the Aishao, the line between life and death blurred, leaving the living to navigate a landscape where their fallen brothers in arms lingered, forever bound to the valley's haunted heart. Veterans of the Aishao Valley frequently reported hearing disembodied screams and cries echoing through the jungle at night. One account, documented in a 1970s Veterans Oral History Project, described a platoon from the 1st Cavalry Division camping near the valley in 1968. Around midnight, blood-curdling screams erupted, sounding like wounded soldiers calling for help. The platoon searched but found no one. The screams resumed nightly, always from different directions, unnerving even seasoned troops. Some attributed the sounds to NVA psychological tactics, but the absence of enemy activity puzzled them. Vietnamese locals later told researchers these were the voices of hungry ghosts, soldiers who died without burial, forever trapped in the valley. Similar reports came from other units, with some soldiers claiming the screams mimicked their fallen comrades' voices. The Aishao's dense jungle and foggy hills amplified sounds, creating an acoustic nightmare, but the emotional weight of these experiences suggested a deeper, perhaps supernatural, cause. Operation Wandering Soul's eerie broadcasts may have primed troops to interpret such sounds as ghostly, yet many insisted the screams predated the campaign. These haunting noises, woven into the valley's legend, left soldiers questioning whether the Aishao was a battlefield or a graveyard where the dead still cried out. The Aishao Valley's nocturnal wails seemed to carry the anguish of its unburied dead, as if the jungle itself mourned their restless plight. Soldiers reported moments when the screams morphed into anguished pleas, calling out names of living comrades and voices eerily familiar, chilling even the bravest. One trooper, in a 1971 letter home, described a night when the cries seemed to circle their camp, growing louder, then fading into a haunting whisper, as if the spirits were searching for solace. Patrols sent to investigate found only tangled vines and bomb craters, yet the air felt thick with unseen presence. Vietnamese elders, consulted post-war, spoke of Tien Ki Wan, the cries of souls denied proper rites, doomed to wander the valley's fog-choked trails. Some soldiers swore they saw fleeting shadows during these episodes, vague outlines of men in tattered gear, their faces obscured, vanishing into the mist. The Aishao's acoustic tricks echoes bouncing off cliffs could explain some sounds, but the visceral terror they evoked defied logic. Radios sometimes picked up static laced with faint sobs, untraceable to any source. The psychological toll of constant ambushes and sleepless nights heightened the dread, yet the scream's persistence across units suggested a deeper force. Troops began avoiding certain ravines, marked by an unnatural chill, where the cries were loudest. Operation Wandering Soul's tapes, meant to unnerve the enemy, seemed to pale against the valley's organic horrors, as if the Aishao had its own voice, older and more primal. These nightly laments, woven into the soldiers' nightmares, transformed the valley into a spectral graveyard where the living bore witness to the dead's unending grief, their cries a haunting reminder of the cost of war. In 1972, South Korean troops stationed near the Aishao Valley, as depicted in the horror film Our Point, encountered supernatural phenomena at an abandoned French plantation. Though fictionalized, the film drew on real veteran stories of eerie encounters in the region. Soldiers reported seeing apparitions of a Vietnamese woman in traditional attire, believed to be a victim of wartime violence, wandering the plantation's halls. Others described ghostly American soldiers, possibly from earlier Aishao battles, appearing on the second floor. Strange radio transmissions, attributed to a French unit that didn't exist, added to the unease. Veterans' accounts from the area corroborate these tales, with some U.S. troops reporting similar sightings at old colonial structures near the valley. The plantation, likely a relic of French Indochina, stood near sites of heavy fighting, where unburied bodies fueled local ghost stories. Vietnamese beliefs and spirits tied to specific places aligned with these reports, as did the Aishao's history of violent death. The plantation's eerie reputation, amplified by its isolation and decay, made it a focal point for supernatural lore, where soldiers from multiple nations encountered apparitions that blurred the boundaries of history, culture, and reality. The Aishao Valley's French plantation, its crumbling walls steeped in decay, seemed to serve as a nexus for the valley's restless spirits, drawing soldiers into its haunted orbit. South Korean troops whispered of footsteps echoing in empty corridors, accompanied by faint sobs in a language none could place. One ROK soldier, in a 1973 report, described seeing the Vietnamese woman's apparition glide through a shattered window, so her eyes fixed on him before she vanished into the jungle mist. U.S. veterans, too, shared tales of encountering spectral figures in the plantation's overgrown courtyard. Soldiers in outdated gear, their faces gaunt, pointing toward hidden bunkers as if warning of danger. The plantation's colonial relics, rusted chandeliers, cracked tiles seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, amplified by the valley's bloody history. Vietnamese locals, wary of the site, spoke of uneasy spirits bound to places of violent death, forever tethered to the plantation's ruins. Radios in the area crackled with garbled voices, some in French, others in English, despite no active transmissions. The dense fog that clung to the Aishao seemed to thicken around the state, as if shielding its secrets. Soldiers reported sudden chills or the scent of jasmine, a hallmark of Vietnamese ancestor rituals in rooms long abandoned. The plantation's isolation, far from any village, made these encounters more vivid, as if the spirits thrived in its desolation, for those who ventured inside. The line between past and present blurred, with apparitions weaving a tapestry of shared grief across cultures. The Aishao's plantation became a haunted monument, its decaying halls a stage where the dead of many nations, French, Vietnamese, American, Korean, mingled, and their spectral presence a chilling reminder of the valley's unending legacy of loss and unrest. In 2014, Vietnam veteran Patrick Wells, a former 101st Airborne lieutenant, published a poignant letter to comrades killed in a 1970 friendly fire incident near Fire Support Base Bastan, close to the Aishao Valley. Written as therapy for PTSD, the letter described a rainy Christmas Eve when incoming rounds struck, killing several soldiers. Wells, who witnessed the tragedy, felt haunted by their deaths, sensing their presence in the years that followed. He wrote of sleepless nights, where he saw his fallen friends, their faces vivid, urging him to honor their sacrifice. While not explicitly supernatural, Wells' experience reflects a broader phenomenon among Aishao veterans, a persistent connection to the dead, often manifesting as visions or feelings of being watched. Other veterans shared similar stories in PTSD therapy groups, describing apparitions of lost squad mates during moments of reflection. Vietnamese beliefs in ghosts seeking acknowledgement resonate with these accounts, suggesting the soldiers' spirits lingered, seeking closure. Wells' letter, a raw and emotional artifact, underscores the Aishao's lasting impact, where the line between memory and haunting blurred, leaving survivors to grapple with the valley's spectral legacy long after the war ended. The Aishao Valley's spectral hold on Patrick Wells and his comrades lingered like a shadow, its haunting echoes reverberating through decades of silence. In therapy sessions, Wells described moments when the air grew heavy, as if his fallen squad mates stood beside him, their presence palpable in the stillness of his home. Other veterans echoed this, recounting dreams where Aishao's jungles reappeared, with ghostly figures in fatigues beckoning them toward forgotten battlegrounds. One soldier in a 2016 PTSD group spoke of seeing his radioman killed at Bastogne sitting at his kitchen table, silently nodding, as if to affirm their shared bond. These visions, often vivid during quiet moments, carried the weight of unresolved guilt and grief. Vietnamese traditions, which Wells learned about post-war, spoke of ongoing spirits calling out for recognition, their unrest tied to the valley's unburied dead. Some veterans adopted rituals, lighting candles or leaving offerings to honor their lost friends, hoping to ease their spectral unrest. The Aishao's scarred landscape, etched in their memories, seemed to bridge the physical and spiritual, as if its fog and blood-soaked earth sustained these apparitions. Wells' letter, raw with emotion, became a touchstone for others, who saw their own hauntings reflected in his words. The valley's legacy, amplified by its relentless violence, left survivors navigating a liminal space where memory and the supernatural intertwined. For Wells, the apparitions were not mere hallucinations, but a call to bear witness, to carry the stories of the fallen forward. The Shao, even years later, remained a place of eternal vigil, its ghosts whispering through the lives of those who survived, urging them to remember the sacrifices etched into its cursed ground. Among the strangest Shao stories were reports of fanged creatures with black eyes, described by some troops as bulletproof beasts that stalked the jungle. A 1965 account, shared in military folklore blogs, detailed a Marine patrol encountering a humanoid figure with sharp teeth and glowing eyes, attempting to drag a soldier into the underbrush. Bullets fired at the creature reportedly had no effect, and it vanished into the trees. Similar sightings, documented in veteran stories on We Are the Mighty, suggested these entities thrived in the valley's dense canopy, where sunlight rarely penetrated. Some, Nam, speculated the military's use of Agent Orange and napalm was meant to flush out these creatures, not just the NVA. Skeptics attributed the sightings to stress, malaria-induced hallucinations, or misidentified animals like gibbons. However, Vietnamese folklore about forest spirits and vengeful ghosts lent cultural beat to the reports, as did the valley's reputation for the uncanny. The fanged creatures, whether real or imagined, became a chilling part of the Aishao's mythos, embodying the primal fear that soldiers faced not only human enemies but otherworldly predators in the Valley of Death. The Aishao Valley's fanged creatures seemed to lurk in the shadows of its cursed jungle, their presence a terrifying enigma that defied the war's already brutal reality. Veterans. D-Day.
Lines. Tommy's platoon, under Lieutenant Harold Brooks, fell back toward Bastogne, their boots crunching through knee-deep snow. The air reeked of cordite and blood. Tommy's hands ached from gripping his rifle, his fingers numb despite his gloves. "Keep moving," Brooks barked, his voice hoarse. The lieutenant, a West Point graduate, was all discipline, but even he looked rattled. Rumors of German paratroopers and English-speaking infiltrators spread like wildfire. As night fell, the platoon took shelter in a bombed-out farmhouse. Tommy, on watch, peered into the darkness. The humming returned, faint but unmistakable, rising from the forest. He nudged Eddie, who was cleaning his Thompson. "There it is again," Tommy said. Eddie listened, then cursed. "Ain't no radio out here, kid." Around midnight, Private Jimmy Walsh, a jittery kid from Chicago, swore he saw a soldier near the tree line, wearing a U.S. helmet but no insignia. "He just stood there, staring," Jimmy stammered. When they checked, there were no tracks in the snow. Brooks dismissed it as nerves, but Tommy wasn't so sure. The figure matched what he'd seen that morning, too real to be a hallucination, too fleeting to be human. Brooks called for lights out, but no one truly slept. The farmhouse creaked with every gust of wind, its shattered windows letting in slivers of moonlight that danced across the ruined floorboards. Tommy sat by the doorway, his rifle across his lap, trying to steady his breathing. Each time he blinked, he saw that figure -U.S helmet, no markings, just watching. It wasn't just the look of the man, it was the feeling he left behind, like ice crawling up Tommy's spine. Beside him, Eddie finally drifted off, his head tilted back against a blackened wall, lips slightly parted, breathing slow and shallow. Sometime after 20 hours, a strange knock echoed from the back door, 3 sharp raps. Everyone froze. Eddie jolted awake, clutching his weapon. "Who the hell knocks out here?" he whispered. Brooks raised a hand to silence them, moving toward the sound with his pistol drawn. Tommy followed. The door creaked open slowly, revealing nothing but swirling snow and shadows. No tracks. No sign of anyone nearby. They were about to close the door when Tommy saw it again, about 30 yards out, at the edge of the trees. The figure stood perfectly still, facing them, partially obscured by the drifting flakes. Brooks saw it too. "Who goes there?" he shouted, raising his weapon. No answer. No movement. He fired a warning shot into the air, and the figure disappeared as if swallowed by the night. They charged out to the spot, flashlights cutting through the dark, but found only untouched snow. No footprints, no shell casings, nothing but the echo of the gunshot fading into the forest. The men returned inside, shaken. Brooks didn't speak for a long time. When he did, it was quiet, almost reluctant. No one says a word about this. Understood? Everyone nodded, but the silence said more than words could. Tommy lay back down, staring at the broken ceiling, listening to the wind howl through the trees. Somewhere beyond that, buried beneath the night, the humming continued. By December 18th, the platoon was holed up in a village near St. Vith, sharing rumors with a battered unit from the 106th Infantry. Over weak coffee, a sergeant named Carl Hansen shared a story. 2 days ago, my boys saw something, he said, his voice low. A soldier, American, walking through no man's land during a firefight. Bullets flying, but he didn't flinch. Just kept walking, then vanished. Tommy's stomach churned. What'd he look like? He asked. Hansen shrugged. Like one of us, but wrong. Pale, like he'd been dead a while. Eddie scoffed, but Tommy noticed his hand trembling. Later, Tommy confided in Father Michael O'Reilly, the platoon's chaplain. Father, you think it's a ghost? O'Reilly, a pragmatic Irishman, sighed. War does strange things to the mind, son. But I've heard stories soldiers seeing things they can't explain. He mentioned old European legends of battlefield spirits, souls trapped by violent deaths. Tommy wanted to believe it was just stress, but the humming persisted, now accompanied by faint whispers in the wind. That night, as German shells lit the sky, Tommy saw the figure again, closer this time, standing in the village square. Its eyes met his, hollow and unblinking, before it faded into the smoke. Tommy didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those empty sockets, cold, unfeeling, but aware. The square had gone quiet after the shelling, the smoke lingering like a bad memory. He sat against the wall of the barn they were using for cover, rifle across his knees, every muscle tight. Across from him, Eddie muttered in his sleep, twitching like he was caught in some fevered nightmare. In the corner, Father O'Reilly lit a candle and knelt, lips moving in silent prayer. The flickering flame cast long shadows across the rafters, and for a moment Tommy thought he saw something move in the loft above, just a trick of the light, he told himself. Near dawn, the temperature dropped even further. Frost crept across their packs and gear. The wind picked up, and with it came the whispers again, faint, fragmented, like a radio stuck between stations. Tommy pressed his hands over his ears, but the voices seemed to slip inside his head. They weren't in English. They weren't in any language he recognized. Just sorrowful, urgent tones that made his chest tighten with dread. At first light, Lieutenant Brooks ordered a patrol into the outskirts to scout for enemy movement. Tommy volunteered. Maybe fresh air, even in this hell, would clear his head. He and 2 others, Corporal Mills and Private Joe Ramirez, moved quietly through the ruins of the village. As they rounded a corner near the old church, they found fresh prints in the snow American boots, but no signs of anyone nearby. The prints led up to the altar steps and stopped. No exit trail. No sign of struggle, just a line of footprints ending in nothing. Ramirez backed away, whispering a prayer in Spanish. Back at the barn, Tommy didn't speak a word. He just kept glancing toward the shattered windows, half expecting to see the figure staring in. The platoon reached Bastogne by December 20th, joining the 101st Airborne in a desperate stand. The town was encircled, supplies dwindling. Tommy's boots were soaked, his toes frostbitten. The humming had stopped, but the phantom soldier haunted his dreams. During a rare lull, he overheard medics discussing a strange report. Wounded soldiers claiming a figure in a U.S. uniform guided them to safety during a blizzard. Called him the Phantom Soldier, one medic said. Tommy's pulse quickened. He wasn't alone in seeing it. On Christmas Eve, the platoon defended a crossroads against a German assault. Amid the chaos, Tommy spotted the figure again, standing on a ridge, pointing toward a gap in the German lines. Against orders, Tommy shouted for his squad to shift fire. The maneuver worked, repelling the attack. Brooks chewed him out, but Eddie backed him up. "How'd you know, kid?" he asked later. Tommy hesitated. "I saw something." Eddie didn't press, but his eyes betrayed unease. The victory was short-lived. Bastogne remained under siege, and the Phantom's presence felt like both a warning and a guide. The cold in Bastogne was merciless, burrowing into the bones and sapping the will. Snow fell in a steady curtain, blanketing foxholes and corpses alike. The trees stood like silent sentinels around the battered town, their limbs crusted with ice. Mortar shells thundered in the distance, shaking the ground like the earth itself was protesting the bloodshed. The men grew thinner by the day, their rations barely enough to keep them moving. They wrapped their feet in burlap, shared what smokes they had left, and took turns melting snow over small stoves for water. Every night, the wind howled through the shattered buildings like a banshee, and the wounded cried out in their sleep. Tommy found himself staring too long at shadows, listening for that faint hum he no longer heard but expected, like a phantom heartbeat. On December 26th, rumors swirled that Patton's tanks were approaching. Morale lifted for a moment, just enough for the men to joke about warm food and cigarettes again. That night, Tommy found himself posted alone near the church ruins, watching the road to the south. The moonlight illuminated the frost-covered rubble, and for a brief second he saw the figure again. Closer this time. A man in a U.S. uniform, features obscured by shadow, standing completely still behind a broken stone wall. Tommy's breath caught in his throat. The soldier raised a hand not in warning, but in a slow, deliberate salute before turning and vanishing into the trees. Tommy blinked, stepped forward, heart hammering, but found only boot prints in the snow. He followed them a few feet before they stopped abruptly, like the man had simply ceased to exist. The next morning, a scout patrol returned with news. A German machine gun nest had been abandoned near that same ridge. Had the figure led him away from danger? Or shown him where to strike next? Tommy told no one this time, not even Eddie. He simply kept watch, eyes on the tree line, waiting to see if the Phantom would return. After Christmas, the platoon was sent to reinforce a line near Foy. The forest was a labyrinth of snow and shadow, every creak a potential ambush. Tommy's nerves were frayed, his sleep plagued by visions of the Phantom. One night, on patrol with Jimmy and Eddie, he heard the humming again, louder, like a dirge. "It's coming from over there," Jimmy whispered, pointing to a clearing. Against Eddie's protests, they investigated. In the moonlight, they found an abandoned German trench, littered with frozen bodies. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by a voice Tommy's name, spoken in a hollow tone. Jimmy bolted, but Tommy froze, staring at the Phantom soldier standing among the dead. Its uniform was shredded, its face gaunt but strangely familiar. "Follow it," rasped, pointing deeper into the woods. Eddie dragged Tommy back to camp, cursing. "You're losing it, kid." But Tommy couldn't shake the Phantom's command. The next day, their patrol avoided an ambush in the direction the Phantom had indicated. Coincidence? Tommy wasn't sure, but he began to wonder if the figure was protecting them. Back at camp, Tommy couldn't sit still. His eyes kept flicking toward the woods, where the snow-covered branches swayed like skeletal hands in the wind. The others huddled around a small fire, trying to stay warm, trying to pretend that the world beyond the tree line wasn't eating at their sanity. Eddie hadn't said much since dragging Tommy out of the trench. He sat apart, cleaning his weapon in silence, occasionally shooting wary glances at his friend. Jimmy, on the other hand, couldn't stop talking. "It said your name," he muttered. "I heard it. Swear to God." "Why you? Why not me or Eddie?" Tommy didn't have an answer. He just knew that something out there had locked onto him, and it wasn't finished yet. That night, the forest breathed. Tommy felt it in his bones. The trees groaned and whispered, their voices blending with the wind. He stood watch alone, gripping his rifle tight as his breath curled in white plumes. In the distance, the humming returned, rising and falling like a warning. When he looked to the tree line, the phantom was there again, closer than ever before. Its uniform was a patchwork of eras, pieces from both sides of the war, stitched together in eerie silence. Its eyes were no longer hollow but faintly glowing, as if lit by some internal fire. It raised its arm and pointed not a vague gesture this time, but toward a specific ridge marked by shattered pines. Tommy didn't tell anyone what he saw. He didn't want to be labeled insane or pulled off duty. But in the morning, when Brooks ordered a recon of the area beyond that ridge, Tommy felt his blood turn cold. "That's where it pointed," he whispered to Eddie, who stiffened beside him. The patrol moved out in a tight formation, the snow crunching beneath their boots, visibility low. They found signs of German movement, fresh tracks, scattered gear, but also something else. Shells in the trees, primed but rigged to detonate by wire. A perfect kill zone. Had they walked into it blind, they would have been cut to ribbons. Lieutenant Brooks was the first to realize. "We were supposed to die here," he muttered. Jaw clenched. They withdrew quickly, shaken and quiet. That evening, Brooks approached Tommy alone. "What aren't you telling me?" he asked. Tommy hesitated, then simply said, "Something out there doesn't want us dead. Yet." Back in Bastogne, Tommy sought Father O'Reilly again. The chaplain was tending to the wounded, his cassock stained with blood. Tommy confessed everything: the sightings, the voice, the uncanny luck. O'Reilly listened gravely, then shared a story from his time in Normandy. "I saw a figure once, during a shelling," he said. "Led me to a wounded boy I'd have missed otherwise. Never saw it again, but I prayed for its soul." He suggested the phantom might be a lost soldier, bound to the battlefield by unfinished business. "Pray for him, Thomas," O'Reilly urged. "And be cautious. Not all spirits mean well." Tommy tried to pray, but doubt gnawed at him. Was the phantom a guardian, or a trick? Military records, he learned, contained no mention of such phenomena, but oral accounts were spreading. A runner from the 10th Armored mentioned a similar figure near Clairvaux, guiding lost GIs. Tommy began keeping a journal, documenting each sighting, hoping to make sense of the mystery. That night, the town of Bastogne pulsed with tension. Artillery echoed in the distance, a reminder that safety was a fleeting illusion. Tommy sat near the edge of a blown-out chapel, his fingers trembling as he scrawled in his small, weather-worn journal. The entries were raw descriptions of the phantom's face, the places it appeared, the feeling in the air before it showed itself. He underlined the word familiar twice, unsure why. Something about the figure gnawed at him, not just its unnatural presence, but the strange sense of recognition it evoked, as though he had met it once, long ago, in another life or dream. Father O'Reilly returned just after midnight, lighting a candle beneath the shattered altar. "Heard you're keeping notes," he said gently. "Might help others one day." Tommy looked up. "If we make it out," he muttered. The priest smiled wearily. "That's always been the wager, hasn't it?" After a pause, O'Reilly pulled a small leather pouch from beneath his coat and handed it to Tommy. Inside was a rosary and a narrow slip of parchment. Found this in Normandy after that vision. A battlefield prayer. Old Latin. Maybe it'll help bring peace to your phantom. Tommy folded the slip and tucked it into his breast pocket, unsure if he felt comforted or burdened. That night, just past 3 a.m., the humming returned this time, inside the chapel. It filled the stone walls like a low, ancient chant. Tommy rose and turned, heart pounding. The phantom stood at the nave, unmoving, its eyes brighter now, like cold coals under ash. Tommy didn't speak. Instead, he reached into his pocket and drew the parchment. Quietly, almost instinctively, he began to read the Latin prayer aloud. The moment he uttered the final line, the humming ceased. The phantom lowered its head, as if acknowledging the words, then vanished before Tommy's eyes. The next morning, the air around the chapel felt lighter, clearer. Eddie noticed it too. "Feels different here," he said. squinting at the morning light. Tommy didn't respond, just touched the spot over his heart where the parchment now rested. That day, 2 men from the 502nd stumbled into Bastogne lost in the snow for nearly 48 hours. They claimed a lone soldier led them through a minefield in the dark, saying only, "This way. You're not done yet." Miette. When they turned to thank him, he was gone. Rumors of the Malmedy massacre reached the platoon on December 27th. German SS troops had executed American POWs, fueling rage and fear. Tommy overheard Brooks discussing it with a colonel, who mentioned strange reports, survivors claiming a figure in a U.S. uniform appeared during the massacre, distracting the Germans and allowing a few to escape. Superstition. The colonel scoffed, but Tommy's mind raced. Was it the same phantom? That night, during a patrol, the humming returned, accompanied by distant gunfire. Tommy saw the figure again, standing near a frozen creek, its eyes fixed on him. This time it spoke clearly, "Beware the crossroads." The next day, Brooks received orders to secure a crossroads near Chinon. Tommy begged him to reconsider, citing the phantom's warning. Brooks, exasperated, ignored him. The mission was a disaster. German artillery obliterated half the squad. Tommy survived, guilt-ridden. Had he failed to heed the phantom's guidance? The screams of the wounded still echoed in Tommy's ears as they dragged what was left of the squad back behind the tree line. Snow was painted red where the mortar rounds had landed, their craters steaming in the frozen ground. Eddie had taken shrapnel in the leg, and 3 others hadn't come back at all. Brooks was silent, his face pale beneath the grime, jaw clenched as he lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. No one said a word about the warning, not even Tommy, who sat by a dying fire, staring into the embers like they held answers he couldn't find. The phantom's voice, calm, low, unmistakably human, replayed in his head. "Beware the crossroads." Thieves. By dawn, the snow had resumed, gently covering the evidence of their loss. They buried the dead in shallow graves hacked into the frozen earth, marking them with pine boughs and scraps of wood. No chaplain, no ceremony. Just silence, broken only by the scraping of entrenching tools and the occasional sniffle of a man too tired to cry. Tommy moved like a ghost himself, hollow-eyed and numb, the weight of guilt pressing down like a second coat. He remembered the look on the phantom's face, those fixed, unblinking eyes, and now, in hindsight, it wasn't a warning born of fear. It was sorrow, a knowing sorrow. That night, as the platoon bivouacked in the ruins of a farmhouse, Tommy sat watch alone. He couldn't sleep. He didn't want to. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the artillery strike again, heard the bones crack, felt the heat of a blast that should have killed him too. In the distance, coyotes howled, or maybe wolves, it was hard to tell in Belgium's winter wild. Then, soft at first, came the hum. Tommy stood, heart pounding, and scanned the tree line. The air shimmered faintly near the creek. The figure emerged tall, broad-shouldered, motionless and yet not threatening. The humming stopped when its boots touched the snow. "I tried," Tommy whispered, ashamed. "I told them." The figure tilted its head, not in reproach, but in understanding. It raised a hand and pointed to the south, where the hills darkened into night. Then it turned and walked away, footsteps crunching lightly before vanishing once more. Tommy stayed out for hours, watching that spot. When Eddie limped out at dawn with a flask, he found Tommy still staring into the trees. "You see him again?" Tommy nodded. "He showed me something. I just don't know what it means yet." Eddie took a swig and handed it over. "Then we figure it out, before anyone else dies." In early January, the platoon linked up with remnants of the 99th Infantry near Elsenborn Ridge. Among them was Private Alan Kessler, a Malmedy survivor. Over a cigarette, Kessler shared his story. "I was in that field, waiting to die," he said. "Then I saw this soldier. American, but pale, like a corpse." He pointed to the woods. "And I ran. Bullets missed me by inches." Tommy's hands shook as he showed Kessler his journal. That's him, Kessler confirmed, pointing to Tommy's sketch. The encounter galvanized Tommy. The phantom wasn't just a hallucination, it had saved lives. But why? And who was it? Kessler mentioned a name, Sergeant John Winter, a soldier from the 28th who died early in the battle. Tommy's heart sank. Winter had been Eddie's friend, killed near St. Vith. Was the phantom Winter's spirit? Tommy sat in stunned silence, the name echoing through his mind like the distant thunder of artillery. Sergeant John Winter. The realization hit like a gut punch. Eddie had spoken of him once, quietly, on a freezing night outside Bastogne. Good man, he'd said. Took a round buying us time near St. Vith. They'd never found the body. Just blood in the snow and an empty helmet. Tommy remembered Eddie kneeling where Winter had fallen, his face clenched with a grief too raw to speak. Kessler lit another cigarette, his hands trembling slightly. He didn't speak, he said. Just looked at me, like he knew me, somehow. Like he was checking. Tommy flipped through his journal again, showing Kessler the sketch he'd drawn after Foy the Narrow. Haunted face, the shredded uniform, the eyes that burned without fire. Kessler nodded without hesitation. That's him. Me, that's the man who saved me. Later that evening, Tommy confronted Eddie in the tent they now shared with two other survivors. Eddie, he began cautiously. Do you remember where Winter was hit? Eddie glanced up from his rifle, jaw tightening. Why? Tommy hesitated, then handed him the journal. Eddie's brow furrowed as he flipped through the pages, pausing when he reached the sketch. His face went pale. That's him, but it can't be. Dull one. Tommy explained everything, the sightings, the voice, the warnings that had saved their lives. Eddie didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he muttered. He always said he'd die with something left undone, said war doesn't let you finish what you started. His voice cracked, and he looked away, blinking fast. Maybe he's still trying to finish it. Over the next few days, the sightings increased, not just for Tommy. A runner from the 2nd Armored swore he saw a figure waving him away from a mined road. A medic claimed a pale soldier silently led him to a frozen casualty in time to save him. The stories matched Tommy's description down to the tattered gear and hollow eyes. In the freezing dark of that shattered forest, it became clear Sergeant John Winter had never truly left. He had become something else, bound to the battlefield, not for vengeance or rest, but for duty. A final mission. And somehow, Tommy had been chosen to see him. Tommy confronted Eddie about Sergeant Winter. Reluctantly, Eddie shared details. John was fearless, he said. Took a shell near St. Vith on the first day. Never found his body. The description matched the phantom, tall, broad-shouldered, with a distinctive scar on his cheek. Tommy became obsessed, scouring the platoon's records during rare downtime. Winter's file listed him as Mia, presumed dead. No photo existed, but a letter from his sister described his scar. Tommy showed it to Eddie, who paled. That's John, he muttered. The humming resumed that night, louder as the phantom appeared in the camp, beckoning Tommy toward the forest. Against Eddie's warnings, Tommy followed, finding a dog tag half buried in the snow. Winter, J. Plot. The discovery chilled him. Was Winter's spirit seeking closure or vengeance? Wah. Tommy crouched in the snow, the cold biting into his knees, staring at the dog tag in his gloved hand. The metal was tarnished and bent, but the name was clear. Winter, J. He turned it over, hoping for more, a blood type, a serial number, something that might explain how it ended up here, in the middle of the forest near their temporary camp. The hum had stopped the moment he touched it, replaced by a heavy silence that seemed to press against his ears. He looked up, half expecting the phantom to still be there, but the clearing was empty. No footprints led away, no sign of passage in the fresh snow. It was as if Winter had risen from the ground and then vanished into thin air. Back at camp, Eddie was pacing, his rifle slung across his shoulder and jaw tight with worry. Damn it, Tommy, he growled when he saw him return. What did I say? Tommy held up the tag in response. Eddie stopped cold, his breath fogging in the frigid air. That's his. No question. He reached for it, but hesitated before his fingers made contact, like the thing might burn him. I thought maybe he made it out. Maybe he got picked up by another unit or just disappeared. But this. D. That night, Tommy couldn't sleep. The dog tag sat on his chest as he lay wrapped in a threadbare blanket, the distant rumble of artillery a low, constant drumbeat. Around him, the men muttered in their dreams, boots kicked against frozen ground. He kept picturing Winter young, determined, the kind of soldier who wouldn't retreat, even in death. If the Phantom was really him, what was he trying to finish? Was it a message? A warning? Or something deeper, unresolved and unfinished? The next morning, Tommy approached Lieutenant Brooks, hesitant. "Sir, I think Sergeant Winter might be," he stopped, choosing his words carefully. "Trying to show us something. There might be remains out near the forest, or something important." Brooks gave him a hard stare. "You think this is about ghosts, Private?" Tommy didn't flinch. "I think it's about one of our own who never made it home." Brooks sighed, rubbed his temples, and finally nodded. "You've got 1 hour. Take someone with you. Don't make me regret it." Tommy left the tent with the dog tag clenched in his fist. Whatever lay buried beneath the snow, he was going to find it, and, with it, the truth behind the haunted figure who wouldn't rest. By January 10th, the Allies were counterattacking, pushing the Germans back. Tommy's platoon joined the advance, retaking Foy. The Phantom appeared less frequently, but its presence lingered. During a skirmish, Tommy saw it again, pointing to a hidden German MG-42 nest. His warning saved the squad, earning Brooks' grudging respect. "You've got instincts, Callahan," he said. Tommy didn't correct him. Off duty, Tommy confided in Jimmy, who'd seen the Phantom too. "What does it want?" Jimmy asked. Tommy theorized Winter was trapped, guiding them to atone for his death. But how? Father O'Reilly suggested a memorial service to free Winter's soul. Tommy agreed, but the war left no time. As the platoon advanced, the humming grew fainter, the Phantom's appearances briefer. Was it fading? Or waiting? Tommy couldn't shake the question as the platoon pressed deeper into the Ardennes, the snow crunching under their boots. The air was sharp, biting at their faces, and the distant rumble of artillery punctuated the eerie quiet. The counteroffensive was gaining ground, but the cost was evident in the weary eyes of the men. Foy was behind them now, its shattered buildings a grim reminder of the fight. Tommy's squad moved cautiously, scanning for snipers or leftover German patrols. The Phantom's presence, though less frequent, hung like a shadow over his thoughts. On January 12th, the platoon reached the outskirts of Novel, a small town reduced to rubble. Orders came to secure a ridge overlooking the main road, a choke point for German supply lines. As they dug in, Tommy felt the familiar hum, faint but unmistakable. He scanned the horizon, expecting to see the spectral figure of Winter, but nothing appeared. Jimmy, crouched nearby, noticed Tommy's distraction. "You hear it again, don't you?" he whispered, his breath visible in the cold. Tommy nodded. "It's weaker now, like it's slipping away." Jimmy shivered, not from the cold. Maybe it's done with us. Helped us enough. But Tommy wasn't convinced. The Phantom had saved them twice, first in Bastogne, now in Foy. If it was Winter's spirit, it wasn't here for no reason. Father O'Reilly's words about a memorial service echoed in his mind, but the chaos of war left no room for rituals. The platoon was spread thin, ammo was low, and the Germans weren't done fighting. Still, Tommy couldn't shake the feeling that Winter's ghost was tied to them, bound by some unfinished business. That night, under a moonless sky, the platoon faced a surprise German counterattack. Shells screamed overhead, and machine gun fire tore through the darkness. Tommy dove into a foxhole, heart pounding, as Brooks bellowed orders. Amid the chaos, the hum returned, sharper now, cutting through the din. Tommy's eyes darted to a copse of trees on the ridge's flank. There, barely visible, stood the phantom, its pale form pointing toward the woods. Tommy's gut clenched. Ambush, he shouted, grabbing Brooks' arm. They're in the trees. Brooks didn't hesitate. He redirected the squad's fire, and moments later, German soldiers emerged from the shadows, caught off guard. The platoon repelled the attack, but not without losses. 2 men were hit, one fatally. As the gunfire died down, Brooks clapped Tommy's shoulder. Good call, kid. You're starting to scare me with that sixth sense. Tommy forced a smile, but his mind was on the phantom. It had saved them again, but its form had flickered, almost transparent. Was it weakening? Or had it used what little strength it had left? He confided in Jimmy later, as they sat by a small fire, sharing a cigarette. I think it's Winter, Tommy said. He's stuck here, trying to keep us alive. But I don't know how to help him. Jimmy exhaled smoke, staring into the flames. Maybe it's not about helping him. Maybe it's about us surviving. So his death wasn't for nothing. The next morning, the platoon moved out, pushing toward Huffalize. The hum was gone, and no phantom appeared. Tommy felt a pang of loss, like a friend had slipped away without goodbye. Father O'Reilly caught up with him during a brief rest. You're still thinking about that ghost, aren't you? The chaplain asked, his voice gentle. Tommy nodded. I want to do the memorial, Father, for Winter. But how in all this? O'Reilly placed a hand on his shoulder. Faith finds a way, son. Even in war, gather the men when we stop next. A prayer might be enough. That evening, as the platoon halted in a bombed-out church, Tommy and O'Reilly organized a small service. The men, weary and skeptical, gathered around a makeshift altar of crates. O'Reilly spoke of sacrifice, of brothers lost but not forgotten. Tommy lit a candle, its flame flickering in the drafty ruin. For Winter, he said softly, hoping the phantom was listening. The air felt lighter, the hum gone. Had they freed him? Or was he still waiting? Near Huffalize, the platoon stumbled on a mass grave of American GIs, half buried in snow. Tommy's stomach turned as he recognized Winter's dog tags among them. The phantom appeared nearby, its form clearer, almost solid. Rest, it whispered, then dissolved. Tommy insisted on burying the bodies, despite Brooks' objections. But the squad complied, shaken by Tommy's intensity. Father O'Reilly led a brief service, praying for Winter and the others. That night, the humming didn't return. Tommy felt a strange emptiness, as if Winter's spirit had moved on. But doubts lingered. Had they truly laid him to rest? Military records later confirmed Winter's death, but no mention of paranormal activity. Tommy's journal became his only proof, a testament to the unexplainable. Tommy clutched the journal tightly, its pages worn from constant handling, as the platoon trudged onward through the icy slopes near Huffalize. The discovery of the mass grave had left the men subdued, their usual banter replaced by a heavy silence. The image of Winter's dog tags, caked in frost, haunted Tommy. The phantom's single word rest echoed in his mind, but the absence of the humming felt more like a void than closure. Had Winter's spirit truly found peace, or was there something more he needed from them? By January 15th, the platoon was tasked with holding a forward position overlooking a German supply route. The cold was relentless, seeping into their bones, and the men huddled in shallow foxholes, their breath forming clouds in the air. Tommy scanned the snow-draped pines, half expecting the phantom to reappear, but the landscape remained empty. Jimmy, sharing his foxhole, noticed his unease. You think he's gone for good? He asked, his voice low. Tommy hesitated, then shrugged. I don't know. Felt like he was part of us, you know. Now it's just quiet. Jimmy nodded, but his eyes flicked nervously to the trees. Quiet's good, right? Means he's at rest. But Tommy wasn't so sure. The burial had been rushed, a necessity under the threat of enemy patrols, and Father O'Reilly's prayers, though heartfelt, had felt incomplete. Tommy's journal entries grew longer, detailing every encounter with the phantom, as if writing it down could anchor the truth. He sketched Winter's face from memory, the hollow eyes of the apparition, hoping to preserve what official records ignored. That night, a German patrol probed their position. The firefight was brief but brutal, with muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness. Tommy's squad held the line, but the chaos stirred something in him, a faint hum, so subtle he thought he'd imagined it. After the enemy retreated, he confided in Father O'Reilly, who'd taken cover nearby. "I heard it again, Father," Tommy whispered. "Just for a moment. What if we didn't do enough?" O'Reilly's face, lined with fatigue, softened. "Spirits linger for many reasons, son. Maybe Winter's tied to more than just his body. Could be this war, this place. Or maybe it's you." "Me?" Tommy frowned. "You saw him first," O'Reilly said. "Maybe he chose you to carry his story." The words weighed heavily on Tommy. The next day, as the platoon advanced toward St. Vith, he took it upon himself to honor Winter in small ways. He shared stories of their friend's courage with the siege, how he'd volunteered for the most dangerous patrols. The men listened, adding their own memories, and for a moment, Winter felt alive again. Tommy hoped it mattered. On January 16th, they found a ruined farmhouse, its cellar offering a rare shelter. There, Tommy organized another small gathering. The men, now more open to his rituals, joined Father O'Reilly in a quiet prayer. Tommy placed Winter's dog tags, cleaned of snow, on a makeshift altar of stones. "We won't forget you," he said, his voice steady. The hum didn't return, but a warmth spread through him, like a silent acknowledgement. As the platoon moved out, Tommy's journal became more than proof, it was a promise. He wrote of Winter, of the Phantom, of the men who'd died and those who'd survived. The war wasn't over, but Tommy felt a shift, as if Winter's spirit had entrusted him with its legacy. Whether the Phantom was gone, or simply silent, Tommy vowed to carry its story, a beacon against the unexplainable horrors of war. As the battle waned, Eddie confronted Tommy. "You're chasing fairy tales," he said. "Winter's dead. Let it go." Tommy argued, showing his journal and Kessler's testimony. Eddie scoffed, blaming battlefield trauma. "We're all seeing things, kid. Doesn't make it real." Their friendship strained. Tommy sought Brooks' opinion. The lieutenant, now more open, admitted hearing rumors of ghostly sightings across the Corps. "No official reports, but soldiers talk," he said. "Doesn't mean it's supernatural." Frustrated, Tommy turned to Father O'Reilly, who urged patience. "Truth takes time," he said. Tommy began sharing his story with other units, collecting accounts of similar sightings. A pattern emerged, a figure in a U.S. uniform, guiding soldiers or warning of danger. Was Winter one of many? Tommy's mind churned with the possibility as the platoon settled into a temporary camp near St. Vith on January 18th. The counteroffensive was grinding forward, but the war's toll was evident in the men's gaunt faces and ragged uniforms. Tommy's journal, now thick with notes and sketches, had become his anchor, a record of the unexplainable. Eddie's dismissal stung, but the growing collection of stories from other units fueled Tommy's resolve. Soldiers from the 101st and 82nd Airborne whispered of a spectral figure in olive drab, pointing to hidden mines or signaling ambushes. Some called it the Guide, others the Watcher. None had a name, but Tommy knew it was Winter or someone like him. He sat by a flickering fire, scribbling accounts from a sergeant in the 30th Infantry. The man had seen a figure vanish after leading his squad away from a collapsing bridge. "Thought I was losing it," the sergeant admitted, "but my men saw it too." Tommy cross-referenced dates and locations, mapping sightings across the Ardennes. The pattern was undeniable. These apparitions appeared at critical moments, saving lives, then fading without a trace. He showed the notes to Jimmy, who'd become his quiet ally. "This ain't just Winter," Jimmy said, eyes wide. "It's like the war's got ghosts everywhere." Father O'Reilly joined them, his breath visible in the chill. "You're building something important, Tommy," he said. "These stories, they're proof the soul endures, even in war." Tommy nodded. but Eddie's skepticism gnawed at him. He approached Brooks again, hoping for validation. The lieutenant, cleaning his rifle, listened quietly. "I've heard the talk," Brooks said. "Men see things when death's close. Could be spirits, could be our minds breaking. Either way, it's keeping us alive. That's what matters." Tommy pressed on, sharing Winter's story with a medic from the 17th Airborne. The medic recounted a figure guiding him to a wounded soldier in a snowstorm. "Looked like one of us, but wrong," he said. Tommy added it to his journal, the weight of the unexplainable growing heavier. He wasn't alone anymore. Winter's ghost was part of something bigger, a silent legion watching over the living. On January 25th, the Battle of the Bulge ended. Tommy's platoon, battered but alive, prepared to move out. In a quiet moment, Tommy saw the Phantom one last time, standing on a ridge overlooking Bastogne. Its face was clear Winter's, but serene. "Thank you," it said, then faded into the dawn. Tommy wept, relief and grief mingling. He showed Eddie the dog tag, hoping to convince him. Eddie softened but remained skeptical. "If it was John, he'd want you to move on," he said. Tommy agreed, but kept his journal, determined to preserve Winter's story. Back at camp, he learned of other paranormal reports, ghostly sentries, phantom planes circulating among veterans. The war's horrors, it seemed, had left echoes beyond the physical. As the platoon packed up their gear near Bastogne on January 26th, the air felt lighter, the oppressive weight of the battle lifting with the morning mist. Tommy's encounter with Winter's Phantom lingered like a half-remembered dream, its serene farewell both a comfort and a mystery. He sat alone, journal open, sketching the ridge where the figure had stood, the horizon glowing pink against the snow. The words "thank you" echoed in his mind, a closure he hadn't expected but still couldn't fully grasp. Had Winter's spirit finally found peace, or was it simply done with him? Back at camp, Tommy overheard snippets of conversations among the men, tales of other unearthly encounters. A corporal from the 506th spoke of a phantom plane, its engines roaring over a battlefield with no aircraft in sight. Another soldier swore he'd seen a ghostly sentry pacing a ruined outpost, vanishing when approached. These stories, shared in hushed tones over cigarettes, mirrored Tommy's own experience. He added them to his journal, each account a thread in a tapestry of the war's hidden side. The men didn't mock, they listened, their own brushes with the inexplicable softening their skepticism. Tommy sought out Father O'Reilly, finding him mending a torn prayer book. "Father, you think these ghosts are all connected?" he asked, voice low. O'Reilly's eyes crinkled with a tired smile. "War tears at the soul, Tommy. Maybe these spirits are what's left those who can't let go, or won't, until they know we're safe." He paused, then added, "Your journal's their voice now. Keep it safe. Ave." Eddie approached later, his usual bravado tempered. "I don't buy ghosts." "Callahan," he said, handing Tommy a cup of weak coffee. "But if Winter was here, you gave him something. Don't know what, but it's enough." Tommy nodded, grateful for the gesture. The journal, now heavy with stories beyond Winter's, felt like a mission. As the platoon prepared to march, Tommy vowed to carry these echoes of the unexplainable, ensuring the ghosts of the Bulge would not be forgotten. Months later, in a German POW camp, Tommy reflected on his experiences. The platoon had been captured during a skirmish, but Tommy clung to his journal, hidden in his coat. Fellow prisoners shared their own ghost stories, sentries at Malmedy, apparitions in Normandy. Tommy realized the Phantom wasn't unique. War's trauma birthed countless spirits. He wrote to Winter's sister, enclosing the dog tag and a letter describing the sightings. Her reply was grateful but brief, confirming Winter's scar and expressing hope for Tommy's return. The war ended and Tommy was freed. Back in Boston, he struggled to adjust, haunted not by ghosts, but by memories. His journal remained unpublished, deemed too fantastical by editors. Tommy sat in his small Boston apartment, the journal open on a rickety table, its pages yellowing under the dim light of a single bulb. It was late 1945, and the world had moved on from the war, but Tommy hadn't. The rejection letters from publishers stung, dismissing his accounts of Winter's phantom and the other spectral sightings as delusions of a traumatized mind or unmarketable folklore. Yet for Tommy, the journal wasn't just a story, it was a testament to the men who'd fought, died, and in some cases, lingered beyond death. He traced Winter's sketched face, the serene expression from that final sighting on the ridge, and felt a pang of duty unfulfilled. He began visiting local veterans' halls, sharing his stories with those who'd understand. The men, many grappling with their own scars, listened intently. A paratrooper from the 82nd recounted a ghostly figure guiding his unit through a minefield in Holland. A sailor spoke of a phantom shipmate seen on a destroyer's deck during a storm. These confessions, raw and unpolished, mirrored Tommy's journal, reinforcing his belief that the war had left more than physical ruins. He started a small group, calling it the Silent Watch, where veterans could share their unexplainable experiences without judgment. The gatherings grew, a quiet refuge for those haunted by memories and mysteries. One evening, Father O'Reilly, now back in Boston, attended. His presence steadied Tommy. "You're doing God's work, son," O'Reilly said, his voice weathered but warm. "These men need to know they're not alone." Tommy nodded, but the weight of the journal's rejection lingered. O'Reilly suggested self-publishing, even if only for the group. "It's not about fame," he said. "It's about truth." Tommy saved what little he earned from odd jobs, printing a modest batch of booklets titled Echoes of the Bulge. He distributed them at meetings, free to any veteran who'd listen. The words found their audience not in bookstores, but in the hands of those who'd seen the unexplainable. Winter's story, and the stories of countless others, lived on, a quiet rebellion against a world too quick to forget. In 1975, a historian named Dr. Clara Hensley contacted Tommy, now 50, after finding his journal in a veteran's archive. She was compiling oral histories of Dewey paranormal encounters. Tommy, hesitant, shared his story. Clara revealed similar accounts: a ghostly figure in the Hergent Forest, a guide during the Battle of Anzio. "War amplifies the supernatural," she said, citing theories of emotional residue. She found no military records of Winter's apparition, but Kessler's letters corroborated Tommy's tale. Clara's book, Echoes of the Fallen, included Tommy's chapter, sparking debate among historians. Skeptics dismissed it, but veterans nodded knowingly. Tommy felt vindicated, his burden shared. Almy sat in his Boston apartment, now cluttered with mementos of a life shaped by war and its aftermath, clutching a copy of Echoes of the Fallen. The book's worn cover, with its stark image of a soldier's silhouette against a snowy ridge, felt like a bridge between his past and the present. At 50, his hair graying and hands weathered, Tommy had spent decades carrying Winter's story alone, save for the small circle of veterans in the Silent Watch. Clara's book changed that, giving his journal's pages a voice that reached beyond smoky veterans' halls. Letters arrived from strangers, veterans, their families, even a few scholars thanking him for speaking what they'd long kept silent. Clara visited again in the spring of 1976, her notebook brimming with new leads. Over coffee, she shared stories she'd uncovered since the book's release: a phantom medic scene during the Battle of the Pacific, a ghostly voice warning of a U-boat off Normandy's coast. "Your account gave others courage," she said, her eyes bright with purpose. "They're coming forward now, unafraid." Tommy felt a warmth he hadn't known in years, the weight of Winter's dog tag, still kept in a drawer, somehow lighter. He joined Clara at a veterans conference in Chicago, where Echoes was discussed. The room buzzed with debate. Historians argued over psychological trauma versus supernatural phenomena, while veterans shared hushed tales of their own. A former tanker recounted a spectral figure guiding his crew through a fog in the Ruhr Valley. Tommy listened, his journal open, adding fresh entries for the first time in years. The Silent Watch grew, its meetings now drawing younger generations curious about their grandfather's wars. Back home, Tommy framed a letter from Winter's sister, now elderly, who'd read the book and wept at her brother's enduring presence. Clara's work hadn't silenced the skeptics, but it had carved a space for the unexplainable. Tommy, no longer alone, felt Winter's spirit at rest, his story woven into a larger tapestry of war's hidden echoes. Tommy attended a 1985 Battle of the Bulge reunion, where he met Alan Kessler again. They swapped stories, marveling at their survival. Other veterans shared tales of the Phantom Soldier, forming a quiet brotherhood. Tommy donated his journal to the National Bowie Museum, hoping future generations would understand. He visited Winter's grave in Connecticut, now marked by a proper headstone. Kneeling, he whispered, "Rest easy, John." The humming never returned, but Tommy felt Winter's presence in every quiet moment. Clara's research suggested the Phantom Soldier was a collective phenomenon, a manifestation of soldiers' guilt and hope. Tommy didn't care for theories, he knew what he'd seen. Tommy stood by Winter's grave, the Connecticut wind carrying the faint scent of pine, his fingers tracing the engraved name on the headstone, John Winter. 1923 to 1944. The 1985 reunion had stirred memories, but it also brought a sense of closure. Meeting Kessler again, now a gray-haired man with a limp, had grounded Tommy in their shared survival. The veterans' tales of the Phantom Soldier, swapped over beers in a dimly lit hall, wove a thread through their experiences, binding them in a way no official history could. Donating his journal to the National Bowie Museum felt right, like passing a torch. He imagined young researchers, decades from now, poring over his faded sketches and cramped handwriting, piecing together the unexplainable. Back in Boston, Tommy kept in touch with Clara, who was now a respected historian. Her latest paper, shared over a crackling phone call, explored the Phantom Soldier as a psychological echo, a projection of collective trauma across battlefields from Normandy to Iwo Jima. Tommy listened politely but shook his head. "Clara, you're chasing reasons," he said. "I just know he was there." She laughed, undeterred, and promised to send him her next book. But Tommy didn't need academic validation. Winter's serene face on that Bastogne ridge was proof enough. He started speaking at local schools, sharing sanitized versions of his story to wide-eyed students. Their questions: was the ghost real? Did he scare you? Brought a smile. He'd hold up a photo of Winter, borrowed from his sister, and say, "He was my friend, and he looked out for us." The Silent Watch Group, now a small but steady network, organized annual memorials, not just for Winter, but for all the phantoms who'd guided soldiers through the war's darkest moments. Tommy lit a candle each year, whispering names he'd collected: the Hergen Guide, the Anzio Shadow, the Pacific Medic. At home, Tommy kept Winter's dog tag on his shelf beside his old helmet. The absence of the hum no longer felt empty, it felt like peace. He'd carried Winter's story as far as he could, and now it belonged to the world, a quiet testament to the unexplainable bond between the living and the lost. In his final years, Tommy spoke at schools, sharing Winter's story. Kids listened, wide-eyed, as he described the Phantom Soldier's guidance. He emphasized courage and camaraderie, not just the supernatural. When he died in 1997, his journal was displayed at a museum exhibit, alongside Kessler's letters and Winter's dog tag. Visitors reported a faint hum near the display, though curators found no source. The Phantom Soldier became a legend, a symbol of sacrifice. Military records remained silent, but the stories of Tommy, Eddie, and others endured, a testament to the unseen forces that linger where wars are fought. In the Ardennes, some say, the Phantom still walks, guiding lost soldier home. Tommy's legacy stretched beyond his passing, his voice echoing through the stories he'd shared and the journal he'd left behind. By the late 1990s, the National Bowie Museum's exhibit, Echoes of the Ardennes, drew crowds, its centerpiece a glass case holding Tommy's weathered journal, Kessler's faded letters, and Winter's dog tag glinting under soft lights. Visitors lingered, some whispering of a faint hum that seemed to pulse from the display. Curators, puzzled, checked for electrical faults but found nothing. A few veterans, now stooped and silver-haired, smiled knowingly, exchanging glances as they recounted their own brushes with the unexplainable. The hum, they said, was Winter or someone like him still watching. The Phantom Soldier's tale spread, fueled by Clara Hensley's books, and the growing interest in Wee Wee's hidden stories. In 2001, a documentary featured Tommy's journal, with actors reenacting the Bastogne sightings. Viewers flooded online forums, sharing family tales of ghostly guides from other battles: Korea, Vietnam, even Desert Storm. The Phantom became more than winter. It was a symbol of soldiers bound by duty, even beyond death. In the Ardennes, tour guides noted visitors' accounts of a lone figure in olive drab, glimpsed at dusk near Foy or Houffalize, pointing towards safe paths before vanishing. Locals shrugged. Unsurprised, the forest, they said, held many ghosts. Tommy's silent watch group, now led by younger veterans, continued his work, hosting memorials and collecting stories. At a 2005 Bulge anniversary, they unveiled a small plaque in Bastogne, inscribed, "For John Winter and the Unseen, who guide us still." Kessler, one of the last survivors, attended, his voice breaking as he read aloud from Tommy's journal. "He gave us hope," Kessler said, "when we had none." The crowd stood silent, the winter air heavy with memory. In quiet moments, Winter's sister, now in her 80s, visited his Connecticut grave, leaving flowers and a copy of Echoes of the Fallen. She swore she felt him nearby, a warmth against the chill. The phantom soldier, whether one spirit or many, remained a beacon, its story carried by those who believed in the unexplainable forces that bind the living to the lost. The sun dipped low over the rolling fields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, casting long shadows across the hollowed ground where, in July 1863, the bloodiest battle of the American Civil War raged. Emma Carter, a 28-year-old history teacher from Ohio, felt an inexplicable pull to visit the battlefield. She had read about the Battle of Gettysburg in countless books, its 3 days of carnage, leaving over 50,000 casualties. But it wasn't just history that drew her. It was the stories of ghost spectral soldiers, phantom drumbeats, and eerie cries reported by visitors and reenactors. Emma, a skeptic by nature, wanted to see for herself. She arrived in Gettysburg on a crisp October morning, her camera slung over her shoulder and a notebook tucked into her bag. The town buzzed with tourists, ghost tour guides, and reenactors in period uniforms. Emma checked into the Balladary Inn, a quaint bed and breakfast rumored to be haunted by Civil War spirits. The inn's proprietor, Judy Caudle, warned her about the gazebo outside, a hotspot for paranormal activity where 6 Union soldiers reportedly died, propped against a maple tree. "Keep your eyes open after dark," Judy said with a knowing smile. That evening, Emma joined a ghost tour led by Phyllis, a local historian with a flair for storytelling. The group gathered at the Jenny Wade house, where the only civilian casualty of the battle, 20-year-old Jenny Wade, was killed by a stray bullet on July 3, 1863. Phyllis recounted how visitors heard moans and saw apparitions of Jenny, her spirit restless after her tragic death. Emma scribbled notes, her skepticism warring with curiosity. As the tour moved to the battlefield, Phyllis described the first recorded ghost sighting during the battle itself, Union soldiers spotting a mysterious horseman in a Revolutionary War uniform, believed to be George Washington's spirit, guiding them through the darkness. Emma felt a chill as they reached Devil's Den, a rocky outcrop where Confederate sharpshooters wreaked havoc. Phyllis shared a tale of a modern reenactor who, during the 130th anniversary event, saw a tattered Confederate soldier standing alone behind a barn, only to vanish when approached. Emma's camera battery inexplicably died as she tried to photograph the rocks, a common occurrence at Devil's Den, where equipment often malfunctions. She jotted down the story, wondering if the weight of history could manifest in such strange ways. Back at the inn, Emma couldn't sleep. The battlefield stories swirled in her mind: soldiers buried in shallow graves, their spirits unable to rest. She stared out her window at the gazebo, half expecting to see a ghostly figure. The cicada's hum seemed to carry whispers of the past, and Emma felt the battlefield calling her to uncover its secrets. Tomorrow, she would explore further, determined to understand why Gettysburg remained America's most haunted battlefield. Emma woke to a foggy morning, the battlefield shrouded in mist that seemed to hold the weight of history. She drove to the Gettysburg National Military Park, where stone monuments dotted the landscape, marking the spots where thousands fell. The Battle of Gettysburg, fought from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, was a turning point in the Civil War, halting Confederate General Robert E. Lee's invasion of the North. The Union victory came at a staggering cost: 8,000 killed outright, 27,000 wounded, and thousands more missing. Many bodies were buried hastily, some in unmarked mass graves, a fact that fueled tales of restless spirits. At the visitor center, Emma met Tom, a park ranger who doubled as a licensed battlefield guide. Tom shared a story from the 1990s, when contractors unearthed skeletal remains while repairing a road near the Grove, a site of brutal fighting between Ohio regulars and the Louisiana Tigers. Locals reported seeing a young girl's ghost nearby, believed to be a suicide victim overwhelmed by the battle's aftermath. "The ground here holds memories," Tom said. "Some say it's why we hear phantom gunfire or see soldiers who vanish." Emma headed to Little Round Top, a hill where Colonel Joshua Chamberlain's 20th Maine Regiment held the Union line against relentless Confederate assaults. The area, dubbed the Valley of Death, was littered with bodies after the battle, left decomposing for months. Visitors often reported seeing spectral figures in Union blue, muskets in hand, or hearing cries of, "Hold the line." Emma climbed the rocky slope, her boots crunching on gravel. She paused at a monument, imagining the chaos of July 2nd, 1863. A sudden rustling in the trees made her spin around, but nothing was there. Her heart raced. Was it the wind? Or something else? She met a group of reenactors setting up camp nearby, their wool uniforms authentic down to the brass buttons. One, a bearded man named Mike, recounted a chilling experience from the previous year's reenactment. During a nighttime march, he saw shadowy figures moving parallel to his unit, too far to be part of the event. They were human-sized, but silent, he said. One ran right through a cannon, like it wasn't there. Mike's story echoed a 2001 video captured by a family, showing ghostly figures marching across a field, later aired on ghost hunting shows. Emma jotted down Mike's account, her skepticism wavering. The historical context, mass death, shallow burials, and unburied remains provided a grim explanation for the hauntings. Soldiers died in agony, far from home, their spirits perhaps trapped in their final moments. She wondered if the reenactors' presence, mimicking the battle, stirred these echoes. As the fog lifted, Emma felt the battlefield's pulse, a blend of history and mystery that demanded she dig deeper. Devil's Den. A jagged maze of boulders loomed before Emma as she approached with her notebook. The site was infamous for its role on July 2nd, 1863, when Confederate sharpshooters used the rocks to pick off Union soldiers, resulting in over 2,000 deaths. The area's grim history and eerie atmosphere made it a paranormal hotspot. Visitors reported cameras failing, strange figures in photos, and disembodied screams echoing through the rocks. Some believe the name Devil's Den stemmed from a pre-Civil War legend of a giant snake, perhaps the devil himself lurking in the crevices. Emma met Sarah, a paranormal investigator with a local group, who was setting up electromagnetic field (EMF) detectors. Sarah shared a story from a 2019 ghost tour when a woman felt a hand grab her ankle while climbing the rocks. Looking down, she saw a young soldier in a tattered uniform, only for him to vanish. "The energy here is intense," Sarah said. "Nen, Mia, one nice. It's like the battle never ended." She explained that high EMF readings often coincided with paranormal activity, possibly from residual energy of the dead. Emma explored the rocks, her skin prickling as she recalled a tale of a hippie-like figure, often seen directing visitors toward Plum Run with the words, "What you're looking for is over there." Historians suggested he was a spirit from Hood's Texas Brigade, whose non-standard uniforms gave a ragged appearance. Emma snapped photos, but her camera screen flickered, showing only blank images. Frustrated, she switched to her phone, which also glitched. A low moan carried on the wind, making her freeze. Was it her imagination, or the echo of a dying soldier? She joined Sarah's group for a nighttime investigation. As they scanned the area with EMF meters, a device spiked near a boulder. Sarah whispered, "Someone's here." A reenactor had once handed pristine musket rounds to a film crew at this spot, only to disappear, leaving no trace. Emma's flashlight beam caught a shadow darting between rocks, but when she followed, nothing was there. The group recorded garbled voices on an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, device, one sounding like "hold fire." Emma's skepticism cracked further. The historical carnage men ambushed, unable to fight back, seemed to linger in the air. Back at her car, Emma reviewed her notes. Devil's Den's hauntings could stem from the sudden, violent deaths, trapping spirits in a loop of their final moments. The rocks, stained with blood, stood as silent witnesses. She felt a mix of awe and unease, knowing she'd return tomorrow to uncover more of Gettysburg's ghostly secrets. Emma parked near the Jenny Wade house, a small brick cottage frozen in time. On July 3, 1863, 20-year-old Mary Virginia Jenny Wade was kneading dough when a Confederate bullet pierced 2 doors, striking her heart. The only civilian killed during the battle, Jenny's tragic death made her home a focal point for paranormal activity. Visitors reported hearing moans, footsteps, and Jenny's voice, while some felt a phantom hand touch them. The house, now a museum, preserved bullet holes and blood-stained floorboards, a grim reminder of the war's reach. Inside, Emma met Linda, a tour guide who shared a recent account from a visitor named Melanie, who posted on X about a late-night tour. Melanie heard a soft high from an empty room, attributed to Jenny's spirit. Linda explained that Jenny was engaged to Corporal Johnston Jack Skelly, who died in captivity without learning of her fate. Some believed moving Jenny's grave disturbed her spirit, tying her to the house. Emma noted the emotional weight of their story, love cut short by war, perhaps fueling the hauntings. The tour moved to the kitchen, where Jenny died. Emma felt a chill, though the room was warm. Linda recounted a 2020 incident, when a video captured a shadowy figure moving through the room, aired on Ghost Adventures. Guests often reported their belongings rearranged, as if Jenny were still tidying her home. Emma's notebook filled with details: the stray bullet, the sudden death, the lingering grief. She wondered if Jenny's spirit sought closure, unable to leave the place of her demise. Outside, Emma met a couple from a paranormal conference staying at the Balladary Inn. They described hearing footsteps in the Jenny Wade house's attic during a private tour, though no one was upstairs. The man, a skeptic, admitted feeling watched. Emma considered the historical context. Gettysburg's homes became makeshift hospitals filled with the dying. The trauma of those days, especially for a civilian like Jenny, could imprint on the house, creating a residual haunting. That night, Emma joined a booze and booze pub crawl, stopping at the Farnsworth house, another haunted site where Confederate snipers once hid. The guide shared a tale of a boy named Jeremy, killed in a carriage accident during the war, whose spirit played marbles in the inn. Emma sipped her drink, reflecting on Jenny's story. The civilian's death, amid soldiers' sacrifices, stood out, her spirit a symbol of the war's indiscriminate toll. Emma resolved to visit more haunted sites, chasing the battlefield's restless souls. The Gettysburg Orphanage, originally a private home, stood ominously on Baltimore Street. During the battle, it served as a makeshift hospital, its cellar filled with the dead and dying. After the war, it became the National Soldiers' Orphanage, housing children who lost parents in the conflict. Emma learned of its dark history. Headmistress Rosa Carmichael's cruelty led to her conviction for child abuse, and rumors persisted of children's spirits haunting the site. Psychics reportedly refused to enter the cellar, overwhelmed by negative energy. Emma toured the building with Richard, a guide from Civil War ghosts. He shared a 2018 account of a visitor who saw a child's apparition in the cellar, holding a rag doll, only to vanish. The orphanage's grim past wounded soldiers, abused orphans created a perfect storm for hauntings. Richard explained that some believed the spirits were stuck, unable to move on due to their suffering. Emma felt a heaviness as they descended to the cellar, the air thick with must and history. In the dim light, Richard recounted a story from the 1970s when a maintenance worker heard children's laughter, though the building was empty. Emma's EMF detector, rented from the tour company, beeped erratically. She noted the historical context. The battle's aftermath left thousands of orphans, and places like this were often underfunded, leading to neglect. The trauma of war and abuse could leave a psychic imprint, manifesting as apparitions or sounds. Outside, Emma met a reenactor named Claire, who shared a chilling experience from the 130th anniversary event. While camping near the orphanage, she saw a group of children in old-fashioned clothing playing in the moonlight, only to disappear when she approached. It felt like they didn't know they were dead, Claire said. Emma recorded the story, considering how the orphanage's dual role as hospital and home for the vulnerable amplified its paranormal activity. Back at the inn, Emma reviewed her notes. The orphanage's hauntings seemed tied to its history of suffering soldiers dying in agony, children enduring cruelty. She wondered if the spirits sought acknowledgement, their stories buried in time. Tomorrow, she'd visit Sachs-covered bridge, another haunted site, determined to piece together Gettysburg's ghostly puzzle. Sachs-covered bridge, built in 1852, spanned Marsh Creek, its red timbers a picturesque contrast to its dark history. Used by both Union and Confederate troops during the battle, it was the site of a gruesome event. 3 Confederate deserters, disguised in Union uniforms, that were caught and executed on the bridge. Their spirits, along with others, were said to haunt the area, with visitors reporting apparitions, screams, and the smell of tobacco smoke. Emma arrived at dusk, the bridge glowing in the fading light. She met Joan, a ghost tour guide, who shared a 2021 account of a visitor who photographed orbs and shadowy figures on the bridge. Joan explained that the deserters' sudden deaths, combined with the bridge's strategic role, made it a paranormal hotspot. Some hear footsteps pacing the planks, she said. Emma walked across the bridge, her boots echoing, half expecting to hear another set of steps. Joan recounted a story from a local fisherman, who in 2015, saw a soldier in Confederate gray smoking a pipe on the bridge, only to vanish when approached. The smell of tobacco lingered, a common phenomenon. Emma noted the historical context. Desertion was rampant among young soldiers, and executions were swift, leaving emotional residue. The bridge, a liminal space between life and death, seemed to trap these energies. Emma joined a nighttime tour, her EMF detector in hand. As the group stood silently, a low groan echoed from the creek below. Joan whispered, "That's them." A reenactor once reported seeing 3 figures hanging from the rafters during a midnight walk, a vision that left him shaken. Emma's detector spiked, and she felt a cold spot near the bridge's center. She recorded a faint EVP saying run, perhaps a deserter's final plea. Back at her car, Emma reflected on the bridge's hauntings. The violent executions, set against the battle's chaos, could explain the restless spirits. She felt a growing respect for the soldiers suffering, their stories echoing through time. Tomorrow, she'd explore the Grove, another site of mass graves and ghostly sightings. The Grove, a grassy expanse near East Cemetery Hill, was the site of a brutal clash on July 2, 1863, between Ohio regulars and the Louisiana Tigers, a Confederate unit of New Orleans prisoners. The fighting left hundreds dead, buried in unmarked mass graves. When a road was built in 1963, workers unearthed remains, sparking reports of paranormal activity, including sightings of a young girl's ghost. Emma approached the Grove, its stone walls dotted with memorials. She met Mike, the reenactor from Little Round Top, who was leading a historical tour. He shared a 2005 account of a tourist who saw a girl in a white dress wandering the field, believed to be a post-battle suicide victim. She looked real, then faded, the tourist said. Mike explained that the Grove's disturbed graves, combined with the battle's ferocity, created a lingering energy that drew spirits. Emma walked the field, imagining the chaos of that day. The Tigers, known for their savage fighting, left a trail of bodies, many never properly buried. She recalled a story from a 2020 X post about reenactors hearing rebel yells in the Grove at night, with no reenactment scheduled. Her EMF detector hummed softly, spiking near a low stone. A sudden chill made her shiver. Was it the wind, or a presence? Mike shared a personal experience from a 2018 reenactment when he saw a line of soldiers in butternut uniforms charging, only to vanish into the grass. It felt like they were still fighting, he said. Emma noted the historical context: mass graves, disturbed remains, and the psychological toll on survivors could manifest as hauntings. The grove's quiet beauty hid a grim past, its spirits restless. That night, Emma sat on her balcony, reviewing her findings. The grove's hauntings seemed tied to the anonymity of death, soldiers forgotten in the earth. She felt a pull to honor their memory, their stories a testament to the war's cost. Tomorrow, she'd visit Gettysburg College, a campus steeped in ghostly tales. As Emma closed her notebook, a faint glow caught her eye, emanating from the grove's direction. Curiosity overpowered her fatigue, and she grabbed her flashlight, slipping out into the cool night. The field was silent, save for the rustle of leaves. Near the low stone, where her EMF detector had spiked, she noticed a faint mist forming, swirling into the shape of a young girl in a tattered dress. Emma's breath caught. Could this be the suicide victim Mike mentioned? The figure drifted toward a gnarled oak, then dissolved. Emma approached the tree, her flashlight revealing carved initials, E.L. 1863. Who was E.L.? A soldier's sweetheart, perhaps, driven to despair by loss. She snapped a photo, the flash illuminating the oak's rough bark. Later, reviewing the image, she saw faint orbs circling the tree, invisible to her naked eye. The grove's spirits seemed to beckon, urging her to uncover their identities. Emma felt a surge of determination. These forgotten souls deserved remembrance. She returned to the inn, her mind racing with questions about E.L. and the grove's restless dead, ready to explore the college's haunted halls at dawn. Show in sidebar. Man. Gettysburg College, founded in 1832, served as a hospital and observation post during the battle, its buildings filled with wounded soldiers. Pennsylvania Hall, the oldest structure, was a hotspot for paranormal activity, with reports of ghostly surgeries, Confederate sentries, and spectral moans. Emma arrived on campus, its ivy-covered buildings serene yet eerie, knowing the war's chaos had left scars. https://gettysburgghosts.com/Gettysburg-college/. She met Tara, a history major who led campus ghost tours. Tara shared a famous story from the early 1900s, when two female employees took an elevator in Penn Hall, only to descend into a basement operating room filled with wounded soldiers. A doctor approached, but the elevator rose, erasing the scene. It's like the past bleeds through, Tara said. Emma noted the vivid detail, wondering if the trauma of amputations lingered. They visited Glatfelter Hall, home to the Lady in White, a spirit who reportedly jumped from the bell tower after losing her lover in the war. Students claimed gazing into her eyes doomed them to suicide. Tara recounted a 2019 incident when a freshman saw a woman in white on the roof, vanishing into mist. Emma felt uneasy, the tower looming above. The historical context was clear. The college's role as a hospital, with countless deaths, could trap spirits in grief. Emma explored Penn Hall, her flashlight sweeping the halls. Tara shared a 2020 account of a lone sentinel seen carrying a rifle and lantern, pacing the cupola. A security guard reported the figure gesturing wildly, as if warning of danger. Emma's EMF detector beeped near the old elevator, and she heard a faint whisper too faint to discern. The war's brutality, with soldiers dying in agony, seemed to echo in the walls. Back at her dorm, Emma reviewed her notes. The college's hauntings reflected the desperation of wartime hospitals, where survival was uncertain. She felt a growing connection to the spirits, their stories urging her to continue. Tomorrow, she'd visit the Farnsworth House, a sniper's haunt with its own ghostly residence. The Farnsworth House Inn, a stone building on Baltimore Street, was a Confederate sniper's nest during the battle, its attic windows offering clear shots at Union troops. Now a bed and breakfast, it was renowned for paranormal activity, including the spirit of Jeremy, a boy killed in a carriage accident, and Confederate soldiers lingering in the rooms. Emma stepped inside, the creaky floors whispering of history, https://gettysburgcoasts.com/. She met Judy, the inn's guide, who shared a 2017 account of guests photographing orbs and skeletal figures in the attic. One guest woke to find their boots polished by an unseen hand, attributed to a soldier's ghost. Judy explained that the house's role as a hospital and sniper post, with bodies piled in the yard, fueled the hauntings. Emma noted the bullet-pocked walls, a testament to the battle's intensity. In the attic, Judy recounted a story of a 2020 guest who heard marbles rolling, believed to be Jeremy's playful spirit. Emma felt a draft, though the windows were sealed. A reenactor staying at the inn once saw a sniper in gray aiming out a window, only to vanish. The historical context snipers killed in their perch. Patients dying below suggested spirits trapped in their roles, unable to rest. Emma joined a nighttime tour, her EMF detector buzzing. In the dining room, a guest reported a cold touch, and Judy's flashlight flickered. An EVP captured a faint "get out," perhaps a sniper's warning. Emma's heart pounded. The house felt alive with history's echoes. She considered how the sniper's isolation and sudden deaths could bind their spirits to this place. Outside, Emma reflected on the Farnsworth's hauntings. The blend of military and civilian tragedy created a unique spectral presence. She felt a duty to share these stories, giving voice to the forgotten. Tomorrow, she'd explore the Cashtown Inn, another haunted site tied to the battle start, where Confederate generals had planned their advance. The Cashtown Inn, a weathered stagecoach stop 8 miles west, held its own ghostly tales. Emma arrived at dusk, the inn's sagging porch and faded sign evoking 1863. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old wood and candle wax. The innkeeper, Tom, greeted her, his eyes glinting with stories. He spoke of General Lee's troops billeting there before Gettysburg, their boots echoing on the oak floors. Guests reported spectral soldiers pacing the halls, their spurs jingling. One visitor in 2022 swore a lantern flickered to life unaided, casting shadows of a cavalryman. Emma climbed to the attic, once a lookout post, and felt a heavy presence, perhaps a soldier still watching the horizon. Her EMF detector spiked near a cracked mirror, and a faint whisper, "They're coming," chilled her. Downstairs, Tom shared a 2019 EVP of a woman's voice, possibly a nurse who tended wounded soldiers. Emma sensed the inn's walls held grief and vigilance, spirits tethered to their wartime duties. As she left, a cold breeze followed, urging her to tell their stories. The Cashtown Inn, 8 miles west of Gettysburg, was where the first soldier of the 1863 campaign was killed, shot by Confederates advancing through the town. Now a historic inn, it was known for strange orbs, flickering lights, and doors locking inexplicably. But owners Jack and Patty Palladino reported skeletal figures in photos dating back to 1987. Emma arrived, the inn's stone facade exuding an eerie calm. https://allthat'sinteresting.com/Gettysburg-ghosts. She met Patty, who shared a 2010 account of a guest whose suitcase was packed by an unseen force. "It's the soldiers," Patty said. "They're still here. Demira." The inn served as a Confederate headquarters, with wounded treated in the parlor. Emma noted the historical context. The campaign's opening violence, with bodies buried nearby, could anchor spirits to the site. She felt a chill in the lobby, though the fire roared. Patty led Emma to the attic, where Confederate officers planned their advance. A 2015 guest reported hearing boots pacing overhead, though the attic was empty. Emma's EMF detector spiked, and her flashlight flickered. Patty shared a story of a reenactor who saw a soldier in gray staring out a window, vanishing when approached. The sudden deaths and strategic tension of those days seemed to linger. Emma stayed overnight, her room overlooking the road where troops marched. At midnight, she heard a thump, like a door slamming, but found nothing. A photo she took showed faint orbs near the window. The inn's role as a staging ground, with men facing death, could explain the hauntings. She wondered if the spirits sought recognition, their stories untold. In the morning, Emma reviewed her notes. The Cashtown Inn's hauntings tied to the battle's prelude, a reminder of war's far-reaching shadow. She felt drawn to the soldiers' humanity, their fear and resolve. Next, she'd visit the National Cemetery, a place of solemn rest and spectral activity. The National Cemetery, a hollowed expanse of rolling green, held the graves of thousands who fell at Gettysburg. Emma arrived as morning mist clung to the headstones, the air heavy with solemnity. The cemetery, dedicated by Lincoln in 1863, was known for apparitions of soldiers wandering among the graves, their forms fading into the dawn. Park rangers reported orbs and photos and whispers near the Pennsylvania Monument. Emma met Ranger Clara, a historian with a knack for ghostly tales. Clara shared a 2018 account of a visitor who felt a hand on their shoulder near the 20th Main's plot, only to find no one there. "It's the unrest," Clara said. "So many died too young, too fast." The cemetery's role as a burial ground for both identified and unknown soldiers amplified its hauntings. Emma walked the rows, her boots crunching gravel, and noticed bullet-scarred trees from the battle. At the Soldiers' National Monument, her EMF detector buzzed faintly. Clara recounted a 2021 incident where a tour group heard a distant bugle, though no reenactors were present. Emma knelt by a grave marked unknown, feeling a pang of connection to the nameless. A 2019 EVP had captured "I'm here," perhaps a soldier seeking acknowledgement. As dusk fell, Emma's camera caught a misty shape near a cannon, gone in the next frame. The cemetery's weight pressed on her grief, sacrifice, and unresolved stories woven into the earth. She imagined soldiers patrolling eternally, bound by duty. Emma felt compelled to honor them, their lives more than mere history. Tomorrow, she'd explore Sachs Bridge, another haunted site where wounded soldiers crossed, their spirits lingering in the river's reflection. Show in sidebar. Meshet. Gettysburg National Cemetery, dedicated in November 1863, held nearly 4,000 Union graves, its rows of headstones a somber tribute. Confederate dead, left in shallow graves, were later moved south in the 1870s. The cemetery's violent history and delayed burials fueled tales of apparitions, cries, and ghostly music. Emma walked the paths, the air heavy with reverence. She met Laura, a park volunteer who shared a 2018 account of a visitor hearing a fife and drum at dusk, though no reenactments were scheduled. Laura explained that the cemetery's creation, spurred by disease fears from decomposing bodies, left a psychic imprint. Emma noted the historical context: soldiers buried hastily, some unidentified, could wander as restless spirits. Laura recounted a story of a 1990s tourist who saw a Union soldier in blue pacing the graves, vanishing near a monument. "He looked lost," the tourist said. Emma felt a pang, imagining men far from home, their deaths unmarked. Her EMF detector hummed near a headstone, and she heard a faint whisper, perhaps a name. The cemetery's role as a sacred yet haunted space intrigued her. At sunset, Emma joined a candlelit tour. Laura shared a tale of a psychic who sensed anger among Confederate spirits, resentful of their exclusion. A reenactor once reported seeing a line of soldiers in gray marching through the fog, only to dissolve. Emma's photos showed faint orbs, common in the cemetery. The contrast between Union honor and Confederate neglect could fuel the hauntings. Back at the inn, Emma reflected on the cemetery's spirits. Their stories, tied to sacrifice and loss, demanded remembrance. She felt a growing connection to Gettysburg's past, its ghosts urging her forward. Tomorrow, she'd explore Triangular Field, a lesser-known but haunted site where fierce combat left its mark. Triangular Field, a rocky, wooded with gnarled oaks, was a Confederate stronghold during the Battle of Gettysburg. Known for malfunctioning cameras, disembodied voices, and shadowy figures, it drew Emma at dawn. The field's uneven ground, scarred boulders, and tales of unburied dead created an unsettling air. She met Nate, a local historian, who described a 2020 incident where a hiker heard musket fire echoing, though no reenactors were present. The field holds trauma, Nate said. Confederate troops faced relentless Union assaults here, with many falling in brutal hand-to-hand fighting. Emma noted the historical context, bodies left in haste, some never recovered, could tether spirits to this place. Her boots sank into the damp earth as she walked. Nate shared a 2017 account of a photographer whose images showed a misty silhouette of a soldier leaning against a rock, gone in later shots. Emma's EMF detector spiked near a split tree, and her flashlight dimmed briefly. A faint smell of gunpowder lingered, though the air was still. A 2022 EVP had captured a gruff hold the line, perhaps a soldier's eternal command. As fog rolled in, Emma felt watched. Nate recounted a reenactor's tale of seeing a Confederate in tattered gray, staring blankly before vanishing. The field's isolation and slaughter seemed to trap these spirits, replaying their final moments. Emma's camera caught an orb darting among the trees, her heart racing. The triangular field's raw energy, anger, fear, and defiance clung to her. She sensed the soldiers' humanity, their desperate stand etched into the land. Emma vowed to share their stories, giving voice to the forgotten. Next, she'd visit Devil's Den, another blood-soaked site where ghosts reportedly roamed. Triangular Field, northwest of Devil's Den, was a quiet corner of the battlefield where Confederate sharpshooters clashed with Union troops on July 2nd, 1863. Its obscurity belied its paranormal fame, with reports of apparitions, rebel yells, and cameras failing inexplicably. Emma approached the field, its grass swaying under a gray sky, feeling an eerie stillness. She met Chris, a local historian, who shared a 2014 account of a hiker who saw Confederate soldiers crawling through the grass, only to vanish. Chris explained that the field's intense fighting, with men ambushed and buried where they fell, created a residual energy. "Cameras don't work here," he said. Emma tested her phone, which froze, displaying a blank screen. Chris recounted a chilling story from a 2000s reenactment, when a participant heard a voice whisper, "Keep low," saving him from tripping over a hidden rock. The field's history sharpshooters pinned down, unable to retreat, suggested spirits reliving their final moments. Emma noted impressions in the grass, as if bodies had lain there recently. Her EMF detector spiked, and a faint yell echoed, making her jump. They walked to the field's gate, where Union apparitions were often seen. Chris shared a 2019 account of a tourist approached by a soldier in blue, assumed to be a reenactor, who vanished when questioned. Emma felt a cold spot near the gate, her breath visible despite the mild day. The field's isolation, combined with sudden deaths, could trap spirits in a loop. That night, Emma reviewed her notes. Triangular Field's hauntings, tied to ambush and desperation, felt raw, unfiltered. She sensed the soldiers' fear, their stories etched in the earth. Next, she'd visit the slaughter pen, a blood-soaked site with its own ghostly tales. The slaughter pen, a jagged ravine near Devil's Den, was a killing ground on July 2nd, 1863, where Union and Confederate troops clashed amid boulders and scrub. Its name reflected the carnage, with bodies strewn across the rocks. Known for shadowy figures, gunfire echoes, and sudden chills, it beckoned Emma at twilight, the air thick with unease. She met Sarah, a park guide, who shared a 2021 report of a hiker hearing a pained moan near a blood-stained boulder, though no one was there. Sarah explained the pen's chaos soldiers trapped, cut down in close combat, left a psychic scar. Emma noted the historical context. Unburied dead, exposed for days, could anchor restless spirits. Her flashlight flickered as they descended. Sarah recounted a 2016 incident where a photographer's images showed a soldier in butternut, musket raised, vanishing in later frames. Emma's EMF detector buzzed wildly near a crevice, and a sharp crack, like a rifle shot, rang out. A 2023 EVP had captured fall back, perhaps a doomed order. Emma felt eyes on her, the ravine alive with unseen watchers. At the ravine's edge, Sarah shared a reenactor's tale of a hand grasping his ankle, though the ground was clear. Emma's photos revealed faint orbs, darting among the rocks. The slaughter pen's raw violence, men dying in terror, seemed to bind spirits to this jagged maze. Her heart pounded. The air felt charged with grief. As night fell, Emma reflected on the pen's hauntings, a testament to war's brutality. She sensed the soldiers' desperation, their unfinished fight etched into the stones. Emma vowed to honor their memory, their stories a call to remembrance. Tomorrow, she'd explore Little Round Top, a hill steeped in valor and spectral whispers. The slaughter pen. At the foot of Little Round Top was a death trap on July 2nd, 1863, where Confederate troops were ambushed, their bodies covering the ground. The area's name reflected its horror. No grass was visible beneath the dead. Visitors reported hearing moans, screams, and seeing soldiers still fighting. Emma stood at the site, its rocky terrain silent yet oppressive. She met Diane, a ghost tour guide, who shared a 2016 account of a visitor hearing a choking sound, as if a soldier were drowning in blood. Diane explained that the pen's sudden, overwhelming violence, men cut down without warning, created a powerful residual haunting. Emma noted the historical context. The ambush's brutality, with bodies left for days, could bind spirits to the spot. Diane recounted a story of a 2010s reenactor who saw a Confederate soldier reloading a musket, only to vanish. He looked real, then gone, the reenactor said. No. Emma walked the rocks, her boots slipping on moss. A low groan carried on the wind, making her pause. Her EMF detector beeped erratically, and she recorded a faint EVP. Help. The pen's carnage seemed to echo through time. At dusk, Emma joined Diane's tour. A guest reported seeing a soldier crawling, his face bloodied, before disappearing. Diane shared a tale of a 1990s tourist whose photos showed a misty figure amid the rocks. The pen's role as a killing field, with no chance for surrender, suggested spirits trapped in their final agony. Back at her car, Emma reflected on the slaughter pen's hauntings. The sheer scale of death, unmitigated by mercy, left a scar on the land. She felt a duty to honor these men, their pain immortalized. Tomorrow, she'd visit Iverson's Pits, another mass grave site with ghostly residents. Iverson's Pits, a grim hollow north of Gettysburg, was where Confederate soldiers under Colonel Iverson were slaughtered on July 1st, 1863. Ambushed by Union forces, hundreds fell, their bodies dumped into shallow trenches, some still alive. Known for apparitions, wails, and cameras malfunctioning, the site drew Emma at dawn, the air heavy with sorrow. She met Ethan, a battlefield guide, who shared a 2019 account of a hiker hearing anguished cries near the pits, though the area was empty. Ethan explained the massacre's horror. Men shot down in ranks, buried hastily, left a psychic wound. Emma noted the historical context. The unmarked graves, rediscovered decades later, could tether spirits to this desolate spot. Her phone glitched, refusing to record. Ethan recounted a 2022 incident where a tourist's photo showed a soldier in gray, clutching his chest, fading in the next frame. Emma's EMF detector surged near a sunken trench, and a faint smell of blood lingered. A 2020 EVP captured "Bury Me," a plea from the earth. She felt a chill, as if watched by unseen eyes. They walked to a gnarled tree, where Ethan shared a reenactor's tale of seeing a line of Confederates, faces pale, marching into mist, only to vanish. Emma's flashlight flickered, and a low moan echoed, her heart racing. The pit's brutality, men left to die in heaps, seemed to trap their spirits, reliving betrayal and pain. As fog thickened, Emma sensed the soldiers' despair, their stories etched into the soil. Her camera caught a shadowy form near a trench, gone instantly. Iverson's Pits held a raw, unhealed grief, demanding remembrance. Emma vowed to share their tale, honoring the lost. Next, she'd explore Culp's Hill, a site of fierce fighting and spectral echoes. Iverson's Pits, near the Forney farmhouse, was a mass grave site where Confederate troops under General Alfred Iverson were slaughtered on July 1st, 1863. Poorly coordinated attacks left hundreds dead, buried in shallow trenches. The area, now near the Doubleday Inn, was known for apparitions, screams, and a heavy atmosphere. Emma approached, the air thick with history's weight. She met Paul, a battlefield guide who shared a 2013 account of a tourist who saw a line of soldiers in gray marching, only to vanish into the ground. Paul explained that the pits, dug hastily, were disturbed over time, fueling paranormal activity. The men were left where they fell, he said. Emma noted the historical context. Iverson's blunder, costing 900 lives, left a legacy of anguish. Paul recounted a story of a 2000s reenactor who heard screams at midnight, as if the battle raged on. Emma walked the field, her boots sinking into soft earth. Her EMF detector spiked near a low mound, and she felt a sudden sadness. A faint whisper, "Why?" came through her recorder, chilling her. The pit's anonymity, with men unburied for years, could trap their spirits. At night, Emma joined Paul's tour. A guest reported seeing a soldier with a bayonet wound, staggering before disappearing. Paul shared a tale of a 1996 discovery, when bones were found during construction, sparking ghostly sightings. Emma's photos showed orbs, faint but persistent. The pit's grim history suggested spirits seeking recognition, their deaths unmarked. In her room, Emma reviewed her findings. Iverson's pit's hauntings reflected the horror of forgotten graves, soldiers lost to time. She felt their pain, urging her to continue. Next, she'd explore the engine house, a modern structure on haunted ground. The engine house, a red brick structure near the Gettysburg Railroad, stood on land where Confederate skirmishers clashed with Union cavalry on July 1st, 1863. Though modern, it was infamous for flickering lights, footsteps, and spectral figures seen in windows. Emma arrived at noon, the building's stark lines contrasting the battlefield's age-worn scars. She met Rachel, a local paranormal investigator, who shared a 2020 report of a worker hearing boots stomping upstairs, though the building was empty. Rachel explained the site's history. Soldiers died in hasty retreats, their bodies scattered across the rail yard, some never recovered. Emma noted the context. Unmarked deaths in modern construction could stir restless spirits. Her camera glitched, refusing to focus. Rachel recounted a 2018 incident where a visitor saw a soldier in gray peering from a window, gone when approached. Emma's EMF detector buzzed near the entrance, and a cold draft brushed her neck despite the warm day. A 2022 EVP captured a faint "keep moving," perhaps a cavalryman's order. She felt a weight, as if the ground held memories of panic. They explored the upper floor, where Rachel shared a reenactor's tale of a shadow figure darting across the hall, leaving a whiff of gunpowder. Emma's flashlight dimmed, and a low thud echoed, her pulse quickening. The engine house's hauntings, tied to the land's violent past, suggested spirits trapped in their final flight. Her photos showed a misty shape near a stairwell, vanishing in the next shot. As dusk settled, Emma sensed the soldiers' urgency, their stories lingering in the brick and soil. She vowed to honor their memory, amplifying their forgotten voices. The engine house's eerie presence deepened her resolve. Tomorrow, she'd visit Spangler's Spring, a site of relentless fighting and spectral whispers. The Gettysburg Engine House, built in 1991 for the Gettysburg and Northern Railroad, stood on hallowed ground where Union soldiers made a desperate stand on July 1st, 1863. Confederate dead were buried haphazardly nearby, their graves disturbed by construction. Visitors reported cannon fire, shadowy figures, and a sense of unease. Emma arrived, the metal structure gleaming under a cloudy sky. She met Greg, a local historian, who shared a 2017 account of a tourist hearing cannon blasts at midnight, though no events were scheduled. Greg explained that the engine house's location, atop a burial site, stirred paranormal activity. "The dead don't rest easy here," he said. Emma noted the historical context. The first day's chaos with bodies left in fields could leave residual energy. Greg recounted a story of a 2010s visitor who saw a soldier in blue running, only to vanish near the tracks. Emma walked the area, her EMF detector humming. A sudden boom echoed, like distant artillery, making her jump. Her recorder captured a faint fire. Perhaps a soldier's command. The engine house's modern facade belied its grim foundation, built on blood-soaked earth. At dusk, Emma joined Greg's tour. A guest reported a cold touch, and Greg shared a tale of a 2000s worker who saw shadows moving inside the empty building. Emma's photos showed misty shapes near the tracks. The disturbance of graves during construction could explain the hauntings, spirits angered by the intrusion. Back at the inn, Emma reflected on the engine house's enigma. Its hauntings, tied to desecrated graves, spoke of unrest. She felt a connection to the soldiers, their stories demanding to be told. Tomorrow, she'd visit Hunterstown Battlefield, a lesser-known site with its own ghosts. Hunterstown Battlefield, a quiet hamlet northeast of Gettysburg, was the site of a fierce cavalry clash on July 2, 1863, where Union and Confederate horsemen battled amid fields and fences. Known for spectral hoofbeats, shadowy riders, and sudden chills, it drew Emma at sunrise, the dew-soaked grass glinting under a pale sky. She met Lisa, a local guide, who shared a 2021 report of a cyclist hearing galloping horses at dusk, though the road was empty. Lisa explained the battle's intensity. Cavalrymen sabered in close quarters. Some buried in unmarked graves left a haunting imprint. Emma noted the historical context. The chaotic melee, with men and horses falling in heaps, could bind spirits to the land. Her phone's battery drained abruptly. Lisa recounted a 2019 incident where a hiker's photo showed a mounted figure in gray, vanishing in the next frame. Emma's EMF detector spiked near a split-rail fence, and a faint whinny carried on the breeze. A 2023 EVP captured charge, a ghostly order echoing through time. She felt a prickle, as if riders watched from the tree line. They walked to a stone wall, where Lisa shared a reenactor's tale of a phantom trooper, saber raised, galloping past before dissolving. Emma's flashlight flickered, and a cold gust stirred her hair. The battlefield's raw energy, fear, valor, and sudden death seemed to trap its spirits in eternal combat. Her camera caught an orb darting across the field, her heart racing. As morning brightened, Emma sensed the cavalrymen's resolve, their stories woven into the earth. Hunterstown's hauntings, vivid and restless, urged her to honor the fallen. She pledged to share their legacy, amplifying their silent voices. Tomorrow, she'd explore East Cavalry Field, another site of mounted warfare and lingering specters. Hunterstown Battlefield, a few miles north of Gettysburg, saw a cavalry clash on July 2, 1863, between Union General George Custer's men and Confederate General Wade Hampton's division. The skirmish left dozens dead, buried where they fell. Visitors reported hearing hoofbeats, seeing horsemen, and feeling a heavy presence. Emma drove to the site, its fields quiet but charged with history. She met Rachel, a local guide, who shared a 2019 account of a hiker who saw a cavalryman in gray galloping, only to vanish into a tree line. Rachel explained that Hunterstown's small scale made its hauntings intimate, tied to sudden deaths. The cavalry fought fast and died faster, she said. Emma noted the historical context. Cavalry charges, with men and horses falling, left a chaotic imprint. Rachel recounted a story of a 2010s reenactor who heard a horse's whinny at dawn, though no animals were nearby. Emma walked the field, her boots crunching on gravel. Her EMF detector spiked near a fence, and she felt a rush of wind, like a horse passing. A faint EVP whispered charge, a cavalryman's cry. The site's isolation amplified its eerie aura. At sunset, Emma joined Rachel's tour. A guest reported seeing a riderless horse, galloping before fading. Rachel shared a tale of a 2000s farmer who found old sabers in the soil, sparking ghostly sightings. Emma's photos showed orbs near the road. Hunterstown's forgotten clash, with its rapid, violent deaths, could trap spirits in motion. In her car, Emma reviewed her notes. Hunterstown's hauntings, tied to cavalry's fleeting glory, felt vivid, alive. She sensed the soldiers' urgency, their stories echoing. Tomorrow, she'd conclude her journey at the battlefield's heart, seeking answers to Gettysburg's ghostly legacy. The heart of the battlefield, Cemetery Ridge, was the Union's defensive linchpin from July 1st to 3rd, 1863, enduring Pickett's charge and relentless artillery. Known for apparitions, gunfire echoes, and oppressive air, it called Emma at dawn, the ridge's gentle slope belying its bloody past. She met Tom, a park ranger, who shared a 2020 account of a jogger hearing a cannon roar, though no reenactments occurred. Tom explained the ridge's toll thousands fell, some buried hastily, their graves unmarked. Emma noted the historical context, the desperate stand, with men dying in waves, could etch spirits into the land. Her camera flickered, struggling to focus. Tom recounted a 2017 incident where a tourist saw a line of Union soldiers in blue, bayonets fixed, vanishing into mist. Emma's EMF detector buzzed near the angle, a stone wall scarred by bullets. A faint hold came through her recorder, chilling her spine. The ridge's roll as the battle's climax, soaked in sacrifice, seemed to bind its ghosts. They walked to the copse of trees, where Tom shared a reenactor's tale of a Confederate officer, sword raised, fading at dusk. Emma felt a cold spot, her breath visible in the warm air. A 2022 EVP captured for Virginia, a rebel's cry. Her photos showed misty shapes near the wall, gone in seconds. As sunlight faded, Emma reflected on Cemetery Ridge's hauntings, valor, and loss frozen in time. She sensed the soldiers' resolve, their stories demanding to be heard. Gettysburg's ghosts, from Hunterstown to this ridge, wove a tapestry of grief and duty. Emma vowed to share their truth, honoring the fallen. Her journey complete, she felt their presence linger, urging her to carry their memory forward, a bridge between past and present. Emma stood at the center of Gettysburg battlefield, near the angle where Pickett's charge culminated on July 3rd, 1863. The failed Confederate assault left thousands dead, their bodies strewn across the field. This was the heart of the battle, and its hauntings, apparitions of charging soldiers, cannon fire, and cries of forward, were reported yearly. She felt the ground's weight, soaked with blood and memory. She met Mark, a retired park ranger, who shared a 2020 account of a tourist capturing ghostly figures on video, marching near the copse of trees. Mark explained that the charge's catastrophic loss, 6,000 Confederate casualties, in an hour created a psychic scar. The spirits are reliving their last stand, he said. Emma noted the historical context. The Confederacy's collapse began here, with men dying in vain, their spirits restless. Mark recounted a story of a 2010s reenactor who felt a hand push him during a charge reenactment, though no one was near. Emma walked the field, imagining 12,000 men advancing under fire. Her EMF detector screamed, and she heard a distant shout for Virginia. Her recorder captured a faint no, a soldier's despair. The angle's intensity, with its futile heroism, seemed to bind spirits to the land. At dusk, Emma joined Mark's final tour. A guest reported seeing a line of soldiers in gray, fading into mist. Mark shared a tale of a 1996 discovery, bones unearthed near the wall, sparking sightings. Emma's photos showed glowing shapes, like men running. The charge's failure, with its dreams of victory crushed, could explain the haunting spirits seeking redemption. As night fell, Emma stood alone, the battlefield silent. She reflected on her journey. Devil's Den shadows, Jenny's moans, the orphanage's cries, and countless others. Gettysburg's ghosts, born of war's trauma, were echoes of human loss, their stories etched in the earth. She felt their presence, not as threats, but as pleasers for remembrance. Emma vowed to share their tales, ensuring the fallen weren't forgotten. Driving away, she glanced back at the darkened fields. Gettysburg was more than a battlefield. It was a testament to sacrifice, its spirits a bridge to the past. Emma smiled, her notebook heavy with their voices, ready to carry them into the future. Emma's next stop was a small Gettysburg museum tucked on Baltimore Street, housing relics of the 1863 battle, rusted bayonets, tattered flags, and letters never sent. Known for flickering lights and footsteps after hours, it was a haven for lingering spirits. She arrived at noon, the air inside thick with dust and history. She met Clara, the curator, who shared a 2023 report of a visitor hearing a quill scratching in the archive room, though it was empty. Clara explained the artifact's power objects tied to soldiers' final moments could anchor their presence. Emma noted the context: personal items, steeped in love and loss, might hold spirits close. Her EMF detector hummed near a bloodstained diary. Clara recounted a 2021 incident where a display case's glass cracked, revealing a soldier's locket that glowed faintly. Emma touched a bullet-pierced canteen, feeling a jolt, like a heartbeat. A faint EVP whispered home a soldier's longing. The museum's role as a repository, preserving pain and sacrifice, seemed to keep spirits active. They explored the attic, where Clara shared a reenactor's tale of seeing a figure in blue, writing at a desk, vanishing when approached. Emma's flashlight flickered, and a cold draft brushed her cheek. Her photos showed orbs near a cracked mirror, reflecting nothing. The museum's relics, each a fragment of a life cut short, wove a tapestry of unrest. As evening fell, Emma felt the soldiers yearning, their stories trapped in glass cases. She sensed their need for acknowledgement, their voices echoing through time. The museum's hauntings, intimate and poignant, deepened her mission. Emma vowed to weave these tales into her writing, honoring the fallen. Tomorrow, she'd visit the wheat field, a site of swirling combat and spectral soldiers, to complete her journey.